Thank you. We're working diligently to see if we can get an expansion area open in the community room with the charter feed, so it can be a little more relaxing for some of the folks standing. It is not live yet back there. When it is, I'll let you know. So, may I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Bertrand.
Here.
Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Bottorff.
Here.
Mayor Termini.
Here. Would you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I left my packet and the agenda and everything upstairs.
Council members, I believe you have received all the additional materials for tonight's agenda. Staff, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Staff has no changes.
Council, all good? We'll move on to public comments. And this is a time when you get to speak on an item that is not on our agenda. So please hold all your rail, trail, and greenway comments till that item comes up. Anyone who'd like to tell us something that has nothing to do with anything on our agenda tonight, come up and speak your mind. Seeing none? Oh, okay. Step right up.
Shall I write my name?
You can do it after.
Okay. My name is John Holtgren, and I did not check the agenda, so I am even more unprepared. But I recently, or actually for some time, I've been aware of the plans to put the Nissan dealership at the corner of 41st and Soquel Drive. And I've also been paying attention to a growing problem throughout the county of homelessness that I wrote Zach Friend just an email acknowledging that I read his article with some. And this is an issue that is not just Santa Cruz County, but I think that this is such a nice place to live that a lot of people tend to drift here, and it makes it even a bigger problem for the county. So I just wanted to make the comment that the opportunity to take a real good look at what kinds of significant changes might be done to address this large problem in the spirit of how Measure D, the library fund, and also in our area, Measure H, which provided funding for school teachers, how they were successful with a community effort. And I think that we drive by that intersection all the time, and oftentimes my wife is shopping at Safeway and I'm sitting in the car. So I've actually am very familiar with that area, and when I look at it, I see an opportunity that those existing homes, rather than be destroyed and taken away from the whole character of that has been there for so long, that something something like looking at getting skilled laborers together, utilizing the labor. A lot of these homeless people have skilled trade talents and have our experience in trying to get something so that two things can be accomplished. One is that the homes might be saved, and people are working to get some kind of community project for people that desperately need housing, and two, that the effort be done in conjunction with both county and the state, using the kind of resources that were used to achieve the other other kinds of
Thank you.
goals that have been.
I appreciate your comments. I wish that that end of 41st Avenue belonged to Capitola, but it doesn't. But I'm sure that the supervisors are seeing this meeting tonight and hearing your message as well.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much. Anyone else? Then we'll move on to City Council comments. Councilmember Bottorff?
I just have one quick one. I just want to acknowledge that over the Christmas vacation, the Capitola BIA Business Improvement Association took on and put on the first ice skating ring in Capitola called Ice Skate, which people were nervous about sponsoring that and whether it would be successful. And the follow-up on that is that it was a very successful event. They had over 1,300 skaters that enjoyed themselves, and I believe it reflected good on the town of Capitola for trying to do things different. To attempt to ice skate near the ocean was very successful and enjoyed, with the fact that it wasn't cold and that we had extremely cooperative weather during the period. So I just want to acknowledge the business community for taking that chance and putting on that project.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know on Saturday there's a group called Breaking the Glass Ballot that's going to be holding a training for women who are interested in running for office here in Santa Cruz County. It's going to be at New Brighton Middle School from 9:30 to 2:30, I believe. And you can find information about that event on Facebook just by looking up Breaking the Glass Ballot, and also their tickets are available through Eventbrite. So I'm looking forward to that event.
Vice Mayor Bertrand?
Yeah, Village Santa Cruz, a new thing that just started, mostly centered on the west side, but extending down to Rio de Mar, et cetera, is having its 1-year anniversary. And if you're interested in coming, we're going to have a big party. Just call with me. Thanks.
Thank you. First, some housekeeping business. The meeting is cablecast live on Charter Communications Cable TV Channel 8 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. It is being recorded to be rebroadcast on the following Wednesday at 8 a.m. and on Saturday following the first rebroadcast at 1 p.m. on Charter Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Meetings can also be viewed from the city's website, www.cityofcapitola.org. Our technician tonight is Lynn Dutton. Make sure your cell phones are off. Please sign your name in the clipboard prior to coming to the podium when we get to the public comments section, so we can move people through the podium and hear what they all have to say. Tonight's meeting is being held and adjourned in honor of a great matriarch of Capitola who passed last week, Lena Gotti. We all know her. If we live in town, we've all seen her. Great lady, big heart, operated the Capitola produce stand for many years. They own a lot of property around Capitola, and a lot of heart, a lot of love. Great lady, and we'll miss her.
For sure.
We will now go on to treasurer comments.
Thank you. Since this is the first meeting of 2018, I think it's appropriate for me to make an annual plea for fiscal responsibility. Looking over last year's invoices, there were 3 items that kind of popped out to me as areas where we could improve. The first one is legal fees. I realize a lot of these issues are behind or in closed session, and a lot of this probably cannot be avoided. But there was a $104,000 invoice to Whitwer Parkin, which I'm sure you're aware of that, and perhaps that could have been avoided. Anyway, there may be some lessons learned there. This is a very litigious community. Something to keep in mind as we create new projects and make decisions. A second is consulting fees. This is a particular problem this year because of public works staff shortages. You know, we've had an open rec for a project engineer for, I don't know, was it 8 months now? And so we have to lean heavily on consultants just to do the basic blocking and tackling work. So I would encourage you to minimize the requests on staff, particularly Public Works Department, for special projects, investigations, presentations, that kind of thing, because they really are short-staffed. And finally, again, along the lines of short-staffed and using up time and consulting fees, we're now in our 4th year on the zoning code. 2018 is year number 4. So I encourage you to do what it takes to nail that down so we can stop that drain. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Staff, any comments?
Just to announce that the overflow room, which is just across the chambers there, is working. There's a TV there if you'd like to view this on the cable simulcast.
Anyone who would actually like to have a seat during the presentations and watch it live, you can always come back in and speak to us. It's okay. Since most of the crowd is staying here, maybe you'd like to pass the hat for the Capitola Legal Fund. We have a lot of people in the audience tonight. Just trying to help you out, Mr. Treasurer. We'll move on to the consent calendar. This is a list of items taken in a single vote. Any of the council members wish to pull any of the consent items?
I don't want to pull an item, I just want to make a quick comment.
Comment?
I just want to thank our friends at the Museum Board, the Library Advisory Committee, and the Art and Cultural Commission for taking the time to change their bylaws to allow youth membership. It's a great step in getting more youth engagement in city matters, so I really appreciate that. And I
Looking
just
forward
wanted
to
to
it.
extend my thank you.
Anyone? Anyone from the public like to pull an item on consent that we can talk about for a long, long time? No, I'm not seeing anyone.
Motion to approve consent calendar?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we move on to general government business. The first one being the presentation regarding the Santa Cruz Branch Rail Line right-of-way. And before we begin this, I will just make some announcements. We're going to have 12 minutes for Greenway, 12 minutes for Friends of the Rail Trail. Who goes first will be decided by a coin toss. Okay? So let's see. Bud, you want to call something?
Sure. Heads.
All right. Tails it is.
Mark, would you like to receive? Where are you? Where would you like to go first, Mark, or second?
I'm happy to go first.
You're happy to go first? Okay, before you come up and go first, here's how it's going to go. Each presenter is going to have 12 minutes to give their presentation. After the 12 minutes, they're going to have a seat. I'm going to open up to the public comment. You can ask questions. You can make comments about it. Try not to repeat the same thing over and over again. If you have something new to add, certainly everyone is invited to come up and, exercise their First Amendment rights. For those of you who are new here, who are not from Capitola, long-standing tradition of respect, rational discourse, respect for each other, for divergent opinions. So I hope not only for respect, but also to save the time of the presenters, there's a minimum of applause during their conversations, during their presentation, and certainly no sounds of derision that you might want to bring up. We'd like to make this a very Capitola sort of an event, and I was truly surprised. We're the first community to actually invite this kind of discussion, considering how important it is. But we will go forward. Mark, come on up.
Staff.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a staff presentation. I forgot. Steve?
Very short, I promise.
No, it's okay. Take your time.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We just have a brief introduction by staff here. You've actually covered the first slide, which was kind of a presentation overview, so I'll skip over this. Just to give a brief history for those who don't know it, probably everybody does, but in 2012, the corridor was purchased by the Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission, and in 2013, they completed a rail trail master plan that incorporates the Monterey Bay Scenic Rail Trail. In 2016, and the expenditure plan for Measure D, which was passed, included 8% of revenue for the rail corridor and a 17% allocation for the coastal rail trail. And in 2017, the RTC initiated a unified corridor study, which is looking at transportation options along the rail corridor, Highway 1, and SoCal Drive. So I thought I'd just focus on the Unified Corridor Study for a minute and its effect and what it's looking at, particularly on the rail trail. So it's analyzing 5 different scenarios on the rail corridor in a junction to Highway 1 and SoCal Drive. On the corridor, the 5 things it's looking at is a bike and ped path only, bike, bed path, and local transit. Third option is bike, bed path, bus, rapid transit, and freight service down in Watsonville. The fourth option is bike, bed path, local trail, local rail transit, and freight service throughout the county. And those 4 are being compared to a do nothing or no build option. The RTC website indicates the draft report will be available in the fall of this year. So our recommendations tonight is you receive the presentations and public comments, and that you direct staff to schedule a second hearing upon completion of the Unified Corridor Study to review the findings. Other options would include directing staff to bring an item back to the City Council for possible action prior to the completion of the study. That's it. It's back to you.
So just to be clear, this council's action tonight could include one of the following. Just receive the report and stay mute on everything. We could come to some sort of a consensus and direct staff to bring us back a resolution in support of one option or another. Or we could decide to schedule a meeting later when the Unified Corridor Study comes out, when we can further discuss it, and then come to a conclusion. So any of those three options are open. And sorry to give you a misstep, Mark, but now we'll bring you up.
You're on.
Good evening, Mayor Termini, council members. My name is Mark Masidi Miller, and I'm a professional civil engineer. I've got more than 3 decades of experience working in the County of Santa Cruz on public works projects of all types. I'm also the chair of the Friends of the Rail and Trail, and I'm here tonight to talk about a few things. First of all, my conversation tonight is about traffic. It's about you and me. Everybody in our community is stuck in traffic. No matter where you live, no matter where you're going, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're on Highway 1 or a main road, down the village, or even on our local streets. We need a plan for dealing with that. This plan should include transit options for everybody, whether it's raining or not, whether you're young or old, whether you're able to ride a bike or not, whether you're in good health or not, whether you're traveling by yourself or in a group. The good news is we have a plan, at least for the rail corridor. That plan was, as mentioned, the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail Network Master Plan. That was adopted in 2013, adopted by this City Council, the City Councils of Santa Cruz, Watsonville, the County of Santa Cruz, and the Regional Transportation Commission. This is the plan. This plan includes the Coastal Rail Trail. This plan preserves the tracks. That's adopted public policy. This plan is an award-winning plan, and it describes fully the implementation of this Coastal Rail Trail. So what is the Coastal Rail Trail? It's a 12-foot wide, 12 to 16-foot wide path that extends from one end of our county to the other. Here's a picture of it from that Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail Master Plan. So you might ask yourself, how wide is a 12-foot trail? And let's compare it to some other trails that we may be familiar with. The Arana Gulch is an 8-foot wide paved trail. Wilder Ranch is an 8-foot wide paved trail. The Watsonville Slough System is an 8-foot wide trail. The Rispin Mansion is an 8-foot wide paved trail. The Coastal Rail Trail will be 12 to 16 feet wide. That's 1.5 to 2 times as wide as any other trail in the county. It'll be the widest paved trail in the county. It'll serve everybody. It's the fastest way to get a trail built. The master plan is approved. 11 miles of this is funded in one way or another and is currently underway. Staying with the current plan avoids any further delay. And the best thing about this is the whole trail could be completed in about 10 years. Compare that to the trail only. Trail only has 3 really big problems. First of all, the rail trail, tearing up the tracks is going to take about 8 years, at least. And it's going to cost about $32 million, at least. And that doesn't include some of the unknown risks. Some of these unknown risks include rail banking. Rail banking is no longer a slam dunk. Up in Seattle, in the East Regional Corridor, a corridor very much like ours, a few years ago, they settled the property takings litigation associated with the rail banking in that corridor for $140 million. So how do you respond to that? I'd suggest we keep our options open. As our population continues to grow, as congestion worsens, as technology evolves, as the state rail plan unfolds, and as TAMC brings Caltrain to Pajaro in 2022. So, congestion, it's bad, it's getting worse. Most people would agree we have two choices. You can expand Highway 1, or you can add some rail transit. Both of these projects are expensive. Based on published information, Highway 1 is about twice the cost of adding light rail. We also have to look at how are we going to pay for this. Right now, Caltrans' official policy is we're no longer funding highway expansion, we are funding modern rail transit. Keeping the tracks is smart. This is about sustainability and climate change. We need to do our part. Because rail moves more people farther, it has a much better impact on the environment. Vehicle miles traveled is one way of measuring congestion relief, greenhouse gas emissions. Rail and trail together, probably going to be about 70,000 less VMT. That's real traffic relief. Trail only, maybe 7,000. But let's talk about modern rail transit. Many people in our community are familiar with old rail. That's the freight locomotives that weigh 215 tons and haul coal cars at 160 tons up to the Davenport cement plant. Those trains were noisy, they had loud horns. That's not the case anymore. Modern rail is light. Light rail vehicles are 50 tons. They're twice as long as a freight locomotive. They have a fraction of the impact. Up north, SMART, they have a 70-ton DMU that's in service since Labor Day. Those trains carry 300 people, 22 bikes. In fact, SMART has proven so popular with bicyclists that they have added a third car to their two-car train sets just for bicycles. Other technologies that are coming are already here. Battery electric, think Tesla, Nissan Leaf. Quiet zone crossings, instead of a horn, what you hear now is a ding, ding, ding. Think quiet, very quiet. Here's what the outside of a SMART train looks like. Here's what the inside of a SMART train looks like. Every train is equipped with a little snack bar. You get a cup of coffee and a pastry on your way to work. Grab a beer or soda on the way home. They're roomy, they're spacious, they're very comfortable, they're very quiet. Let's talk about the state rail plan just for a minute. This is brand new. This didn't exist a year ago. What's the state doing? Our branch line, shown with a bright yellow arrow, is in the state rail plan. The state rail plan is going to increase ridership by 12-fold. How are they going to do that? They're investing $137 billion between now and 2040 with a very aggressive rollout schedule. The good news is we passed Measure D. We're now a self-help county. We can get our fair share of that money. Need to replace a trestle? Need some money? You want to connect to the state? You want to connect to our neighbors down south? We can do it. This is also about economic vitality. Need to find a new employee, attract top talent, attract some customers. Mobility is the key. We need to find a way of getting our employees to our large employers. The example across the marketplace is people are building around transit. What does our hospitality industry need? What about the housing transportation nexus? What's that? That's about affordability. It's the total cost of living. Housing and transportation together are the largest cost for most homeowners. Imagine what you could do if you could trade your $8,500 a year car expense for a $2,500 a year transit pass. That's a $500 a month savings. That's real money. So what's our recommendation? Stay with the bigger, better vision, rail and trail. Gets us our rail trail as soon as possible with the minimum risk. It maximizes the environmental benefits. It serves everyone. It is the most equitable way forward, and it connects us to the future and all our neighbors. Keeps all of our options open. So let's finish the Unified Corridor study that Mr. Jesberg mentioned earlier, that the RTC is in the middle of, be out later this year, then decide. So I'm almost done, but I've got 3.5 minutes left. So I'm going to jump to a quick little video. Find it. There it is. An 8-foot wide path. And that is about the end of my presentation. I just wanted to add one thing since I have a little bit more time. The Rails to Trails Conservancy, which is a national organization, they keep track of all the Rails to Trails conversions, Rails with Wales, Trails with Rail, whatever. You know, I was surprised to find out there are 33 other Rail with Trail projects in California. That Rail with Trail is the fastest growing trail in the country. It's about a 260% increase over the last few years. That's all I really wanted to add. Thank you.
Mark, I'm going to hold the questions until your 3-minute period, and then after you do your rebuttals, we're going to hold the time after that for the council to ask you direct
that's
questions. This way we're not pushing up against time.
No problem.
Let Bud come up now, and thank you very much. Well done.
Start my 12 minutes yet. I'll find my presentation.
That's a lot of paper for 12 minutes right there, Bud. I don't know. You're going to have to read awfully fast.
All right, hold on.
We'll give you time to set up. It's okay.
And does it just the arrow work here, Jamie, to advance? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for having us, and thank all of you for coming tonight. It sounds like this is the most important entertainment in town tonight. Mayor Termini, council members, thank you. My name is Bud Colligan. I'm a board member of Greenway. I'm a Live Oak resident, and I care very deeply about this community. I spend 100% of my time on community projects.
Bud, get a little closer to the microphone.
I spend 100% of my time on community projects in affordable housing, the arts, education, programs for the underserved, and of course, transportation. So I'd like to tell you about Greenway tonight. And what you're seeing here is Greenway at artist rendition of Greenway at 41st Avenue in Capitola. It is a bi-directional bike path, so we have wheeled transportation on one path and pedestrians on the other for dogs and strollers and so forth, but a way for fast travelers to go on one side and for slow travelers to go on another. And our vision is to transform Santa Cruz County into a world-class active transportation network. Now, we have been so gratified by the number of supporters that have come to our cause. We started 2 years ago, and over 5,800 people have now signed our petition. We're very pleased that Dominican Hospital and over 150 doctors and medical professionals support us. The Business Council, which 86% and a unanimous vote of the board of directors supported us in terms of the Greenway vision. And that's all the major employers, all the commuters in Santa Cruz County. public agencies like the City of Scotts Valley and the La Selva Beach Improvement Association, and Santa Cruz Waves, the bike and board industry leaders, and community leaders like Gail Ortiz and Ted Burke and Jacob Martinez and Julie Packard and Gary Griggs and many, many more. So we're very gratified for their support. And I think what they have applied is what Nels Westman calls a common sense smell test to the figures and facts before us. So why are they all so excited about Greenway? Well, one, Greenway is beauty. This is the vista, of course, from the Capitola Trestle. And Greenway uses all the existing infrastructure, the 24 bridges and trestles, and also it doesn't cut trees, it doesn't move earth and create retaining walls. It uses the existing pathway to create a beautiful pathway for all of our residents. Greenway is affordable. Mark didn't mention much about the cost of the train, but both the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail cost $127 million, forecast $176 million for scenario G to establish train service, and then $10 to $12 million of operating losses for 30 years. It's a total of $663 million. But that's not all. It doesn't include parking. It doesn't include quiet zones. It doesn't include inflation. It doesn't include interest. So we think the total cost of this plan is about $800 to $900 million. And maybe there's free money around. I don't know. But the Greenway plan can be done within the constraints of the money that we have. The $85 million that was allocated in Measure D for building the trail. That's including paying back $11 million to the state for the Prop 116 funds we used to purchase the corridor, and about $70 million to build the trail, which was estimated by our consultants Nelson Nygaard. Greenway is safety and health. How are kids going to get to school? In our days, about 90% of children rode their bikes or walked to school. I'm 63, so that's a long time ago. But now it's about 10 or 15%. And why? Not only children, but adults say the primary reason they don't ride a bicycle is because they're afraid to. And by good reason. We are the second highest county for bike fatalities of 58 counties in California. And the reason I mention health is because we have an obesity crisis, and that's why the doctors and medical professionals are supporting us. Greenway is transportation. Mark mentioned we have about 100,000 cars a day on Highway 1, and we carry on Metro about 15,000 people a day. Well, rail has very low ridership. The 2015 Rail Transit Feasibility Study only showed 5,500 boardings a day. And if you divide that by 2 for round trips, that's only 2,750. So we want to spend $800 or $900 million to move a couple thousand people in our county. It doesn't seem like a good investment for us. By contrast, Greenway, both Nelson Nygaard and we've retained another world-class consultant, Alta Planning and Design, estimates that at the low estimate that 13,000 pedestrians and cyclists a day would use Greenway, and up to 25,000 or more at our midpoint. So one thing I want to communicate more than anything is Greenway is transportation. It's human-powered public transit. Greenway is inclusive, and that's why the disability rights groups are supporting us. So I ask you, which plan is best for Capitola? Fortunately, there was a group called Vision Capitola in 2016 that spent a lot of time thinking about this. They asked Capitolans what they valued and what they expected over the next 10 to 15 years, what they wanted. And for those who commented on the rail corridor, 82% said trail only. And that's similar to the letters that you received, at least what I saw as of yesterday. 80% of the Capitola residents chose Greenway. So we've had 30 years of rail studies, and I brought this little prop 7 different rail studies, so that's your pile of paper, Mike. And what do they all say? Well, first of all, one of the fundamental premises that's wrong is that we are about a third of a population of the 31 different areas in the United States that have light rail. So it's a numbers game, and if you don't have the numbers, you can't afford a system like this. They are huge costs. We have none of the money. The electric train specifically was excluded in the 2015 Rail Transit Feasibility Study because it was twice as expensive as diesel. Low ridership numbers, especially from Watsonville. So only 300 people a day were taking the train according to the rail transit feasibility estimates from Watsonville. Of course, that will have little impact on Highway 1. I want to solve Highway 1 as well, but we think there are better ways of doing that with metro and dedicated bus lanes. And finally, a new tax would be required on top of Measure D. It seems that the strategy of the RTC is to do a study, ignore the results, wait a couple years, and do another study. That's what we've had for the last 30 years. 5,900 miles of rail lines have been rail banked in the U.S. Hundreds of communities have done it. And notwithstanding what Mark said, it is a well-used strategy, and in fact was recommended to the RTC by Woodside Consulting, their own consultants, in 2005, that it is possible and that it's likely to be approved quickly by the Surface Transportation Board. So why are we building this trail if a rail is unlikely? Why are we building the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail? Well, first of all, a couple things that you should know about how it will affect Capitola. You can see here that it's not really a continuous trail. It deviates from the corridor in many places. One is in Capitola, where it descends, it leaves the trail at Jade Park, descends Cliff Drive, goes through Capitola Village, and up steep Monterey Avenue. Well, we all know that skateboards are illegal in the village, so forget skateboards. We know that disabled folks could not traverse these steep declines and inclines on Cliff Drive and Monterey Avenue. And we know that all the parents here want a safe way to school and are not going to send their kids through Capitola Village at rush hour. The Rail with Trail plans also separates Capitola neighborhoods. There will be a 54-inch fence separating the trail and the rail for the entire length of Capitola. So the north and south of Capitola will be separated. All the pathways that you see crossing the railroad today will be gone, and you'll only be able to cross it at major intersections. So together with the Capitola trestle, which can't be used, you'll have an east and west divide and a north and south divide, basically dividing Capitola into 4 quadrants, which is why I think Capitola residents are not in favor of this. And finally, irreparable environmental damage. Yes, it's fine to say, oh, let's have the rail and the trail, but the effective width is what's important. This is a picture from Park Avenue. You can see, as Mark mentioned, there is a 17-foot right-of-way, so 8.5 feet from the center. So if you go out 8.5 feet, you're on the right side of that well-trodden footpath. That means that the entire hillside goes and all the trees go. Justin White from Candy Landscaping and I walked the trail from New Brighton State Beach to the San Lorenzo River. And we counted 347 trees that will be cut, including 205 heritage oaks in this time frame. And you know Park Avenue well. It's full of trees. Finally, I have just 2 more slides. In summary, this is a costly, compromised trail, and I picked this image up from the Friends of the Rail Trail email that was sent to all their supporters to come tonight. And unfortunately, it's a fictitious image. The fence is right next to the rail line. Remember I said it has to be 8.5 foot from the center? Of course, that means that the actual path would start around the yellow dotted line. That would go into the hillside. That would include cutting trees. And even with 4 people on this trail, you can see that there's already conflicts among different users. And that's why both the city of Monterey is now widening their trail, the Monterey Coastal Trail in downtown Monterey, and why Chicago is widening the Lakefront Trail. They found that these conflicts among users are basically destroying the user experience for everyone. So I'll leave you with this quote from Margaret Mead. I think that the Capitola City Council has an opportunity to lead tonight. Kimley Horn, the consultant for the UCIS, is asking for input. They're doing online surveys, they're doing community meetings, but also petition signers, endorsers, and the like. We all are responsible for giving that input. And I ask all of you to take that into consideration tonight. The transportation future of our county depends on it. Thank you
very much, Bud. Two very compelling presentations. Two items. First of all, make sure this clipboard goes down the line for anyone who would like to speak. A show of hands, who would like to talk to us tonight? Very good. I want to hear from every single one of you. And just for the council's amazement, how many people are here from the city of Capitola? Okay. So there's almost no one home watching television. Good. And of the entire audience, how many favor the Friends of the Rail and Trail? How many favor Greenway? Got it. Perfect. Just wanted to get a feel for the crowd. And now, would the first person like to come up and speak to us? And again, please pass the clipboard down so people can start signing.
And if you haven't signed yet,
You have 2 minutes each. And don't be shy about not taking your 2 minutes, but feel free to take every second of it. Okay, who's going to step up first? Ted? It's all you. Let's give me a second just until people congregate. We'll get the speakers to line up there, and they can pass the clipboard back. Thank you all for dealing graciously with a very crowded situation.
So this is 2 minutes rather than 3 minutes?
2 minutes rather than 3 minutes.
Okay. Instant edit.
Oh, you timed your speech, did you? Okay. Okay, just talk a little faster. We'll get the gist. You'll be okay.
Got the thing out. All right. Are you ready?
Ready?
Okay.
Start.
Well, first of all, my name is Ted Burke, and for nearly 40 years, I've been a business owner in Capitola, and I realize that you may prefer to have Capitola residents up here making comments instead of outsiders, but I'm a business owner with 21 employees who live in Capitola, and with another 106 employees who must travel to Capitola from different parts of the county 7 days a week in order to get to their work. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the benefits of the Greenway approach and the significant concerns about trying to squeeze in a rail alongside the trail, especially within the city of Capitola. I think you already know that it would be ineffective, unaffordable, and create unsafe bike, pedestrian, and wheelchair travel. When taking out the existing tracks for a Greenway trail, we would not lose any opportunity for rail service in the future. The reality is that rail banking, which is part of the Greenway proposal, is a legal and effective way to protect for changes of technology in the future, and would allow county residents immediate use of the rail line today for a Greenway, and the conversion from a Greenway back to a rail line should the idea ever become affordable and effective. Moreover, though most people haven't read the RTC reports as you have come to learn that nearly all the existing rails on the rail line will eventually have to come out anyway and be replaced with more modern and safer rails and rail beds to accommodate any modern passenger train travel, especially for high-speed train travel. That fact is in the county's report. So for this and so for many other reasons, I know, and you know, the RTC proposal is grossly inferior to a Greenway proposal. So the real issue tonight is, what is the Capitola Council going to do about it? First of all, I applaud you for bringing this issue to the council, not only to educate the public, but hopefully with the goal of making a decision that will be best for the residents of Capitola and not leaving that up to county politicians to decide. That's not always an easy thing to do. It's a natural course of action among governments. It's usually not to rock the boat, but just to go along with their government brethren, no matter the merits of the issue. We are looking for more. We are, after the presentations, the rebuttals, and public comment, we are here tonight expecting leadership. We are expecting more than words.
We are expecting action. For action really is the true language of leadership. We expect that you will honor both your leadership roles as well as your instincts and do the right thing tonight.
Thank you, Ted. And when you do come to the podium, you're not required to, but if you would like to, let us know if you're a Capitola resident or if you're visiting us from somewhere in the county.
Thank you. Jim Jensen from Santa Cruz. I would hope that the council, when it comes to making the decision tonight, would be to actually wait until all the information is in. I have seen some studies on both sides. It's still up in the air. I've seen quotes anywhere from 4,000 people a day on the bike trail to 25,000. There's been basically one study, and that's not good enough to make policy on. Now, the question about whether Capitola, you have to get off the thing and go through the village, I almost think that's better for Capitola. Otherwise, it's like building an interstate. Everybody just flies over and leaves your downtown and village alone. One thing I haven't seen in all these displays and projects is an actual photo of what a greenway trail looks like. We have a PowerPoint, but if you look at their web page and their Facebook page, it's all 8-foot trails with like 3 people on it. I'd like to see what it looks like and where it is to see if we actually have the people, that number. One more thing, I wonder if Greenway has a plan. You pull up the rails, are there any EIRs? Did they go to Coastal Commission? It could be 2-3 years before that even starts. By that time we'll have 11, 15 miles of trail, and we'll see if we actually need basically a 2-lane road. And with 20 seconds left, thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to Capitola. Thanks for coming in and speaking to us.
Parking's pretty tough, so some other way to get here would be good.
We know about parking, trust me.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having this.
Bring the microphone closer to you, please.
Yeah, my name is Jane Clausen, and I do live in Capitola. And for years, I was a commuter to Watsonville, to the schools in Watsonville. And now I commute there for volunteering. I would definitely use a rapid transit. I would use public transportation. When I do use the buses, the people from Watsonville are certainly using them. I believe they would use trains. I would love to see trains available for young people. I have a grandson right now who loves coming in from Santa Cruz into Capitola to be with his grandmother, and to have him have an access to train with a group of friends where they get safe transportation and they get to use our beaches and not have to drive on the crazy highways that we have now. I think that train is viable. I've been to Spain, I've been to Europe, where trains are just part of life there. If you ever get a chance, I encourage you to go to Seville, Spain, and see the rapid transit, the light rail that they have that's fast, efficient, crossing paths. There are no fences needed there. People are alert and aware, and thousands of tourists mixing in safely, and the public transit is definitely an asset, and it would be to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Buzz Anderson. I grew up on Depot Hill next to the railroad tracks. Fond memories of putting pennies on the tracks and waving to the conductor. My great-grandfather used to come to Camp Capitola before the turn of the century. My mother and father took the Suntan Special in the 30s and 40s to Capitola. I own property in Capitola. My brother lives here, and my cousin also has a home here. My cousin's much more eloquent than I am, so I thought I'd read a letter that he wrote to the council to share with everyone. His name is Stephen Woodside. Dear members of the Capitola City Council, I am writing to urge your support for the Greenway proposal to repurpose the public right-of-way, former railroad, as a multi-use pedestrian and bicycle trail. The Greenway proposal is compelling for Capitola residents who would welcome creation of a safe, quiet, and picturesque alternative route across our village. Greenway envisions an efficient and healthy way to navigate between homes, schools, businesses, and other points of interest here in Mid-County. The alternative proposals make little sense to me. One proposal leaves old tracks in place in spite of the fact that these tracks would need to be replaced if a passenger rail were ever to again operate in the right-of-way. This proposal would create a detour off the right-of-way down onto our already congested village streets. The long-term idea for a passenger rail is just that, not likely to be built for decades. The Greenway proposal preserves the right of the way for future generations while providing mobility benefits in the near term. One additional appeal is to preserve the historic trestle. My skepticism about passenger rail trail in Santa Cruz County may come as a surprise to some. My ancestors came by rail to Camp Capitola. In my legal career, and he was chief county counsel for Marin, Santa Clara, and Santa Rosa County, I was actively involved with several public rail projects in the Bay Area, Caltrain, VTA, Capitola Corridor, and SMART. Despite my nostalgia for rail travel and my professional support for passenger rail projects, I do not believe it is a universal remedy for traffic congestion. Unlike the rail corridor in Santa Cruz, various Bay Area passenger rail lines connect densely populated communities and offer some relief for long-distance commuters. As we plan for the future of transportation in our community, we should be mindful that there are many new technologies and systems being developed to move people and goods. We should not be focused on a 19th century mode of transit as a solution to 21st century problems.
Thank you.
Support Greenway.
Good evening. My name is Nels Westman. I'm a resident of Capitola. I firmly believe that building a passenger railroad in Santa Cruz County makes no financial sense. Hundreds of millions of dollars to build it, millions of dollars annually to operate it. Very little of that will come from the fare box, but will instead depend on staggeringly large state and federal subsidies and major tax increases for county residents. And for what? To transport maybe 5,500 passengers a day from Station A to Station B, at which point they still have to figure out how to get to work, get to shopping, get to home. With over 1,111 cars on Highway 1 each day, it won't really make a blip on our congestion index, and it's simply it can't become a reality. Yet the RTC is going full speed ahead, spending big bucks on their version of rail trail. Why? Because that's what government does. As soon as they spend money, they can start saying, we've already invested $5 million. We can't stop now. And that cynical manipulation needs to stop until common sense is restored and the big spenders are reined in. I listened to the presentation tonight about the what the corridor would look like. It really looks better than I thought it would, except that I just don't think it's reality. I don't think somehow the railroad corridor is going to get pushed over against one side. That ample separation between the pedestrians and bikes and the 25 to 30 mile an hour trains is going to be accomplished by anything other than a fairly robust fence, a fence that will only be able to be crossed at protected pedestrian crossings or at grade crossings. So in essence, it's going to become a barrier running north and south through the length of our county, separating us, much like Highway 1 separates neighborhoods and split cities, just by virtue of the fact that it's unsafe to cross. So for me, instinctively, it seems much more likely that what the corridor is going to be is a very dense, crowded situation with rail cars and with pedestrians and bicyclists being marginalized to one side and in many instances forced off the corridor and down onto the streets. Thank you.
What?
Good evening, council members. My name is Craig Wilson. I'm a SoCal resident. I walked here tonight across many areas that didn't have a sidewalk because that's the nature of our community sometimes. I want to share with you two observations based on my experience because I know you have lots of information in the studies and you will hear from many people tonight. One is I've lived in this county for over 30 years, lived and worked here. And what I find is that the buses often have insufficient riders. So it's hard for me to believe that we're going to have lots of new riders that are going to hop on a train with all the transferring that's going to occur based on what I see with bus ridership. And those are along robust lines, right along corridors. Many of these areas that the rail would go through would not be on a corridor that would be easily exited from and then in service where you need to go. The other is I bike ride to work about half the year. I don't go in the cold, dark, and rain because it's dangerous. My observations, being a longtime resident, is Arana Gulch was closed for years and years, and just within the last 2 years opened up to pedestrian traffic. And now when I ride my bike or walk through there, I see dozens and dozens of people of all kinds using Arana Gulch. And I know it's not the same, but I feel that the trail option would be robustly used by bicycle riders and pedestrians of other sorts. And so I don't think I'm afraid that our county population is just not big enough to give us the ridership that a rail would need to be sustainable. So those are my observations.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Robert Singleton, and I'm the Executive Director of the Santa Cruz County Business Council. We are a consortium of the 70 or so largest employers throughout the county, and we went through a long public process, or not public process, but a long process amongst ourselves to decide how we wanted to come down on this issue on a rail or trail versus trail only. So we invited the RTC multiple times over a 2-year period. We heard from Friends of the Rail Trail, we heard from Greenway, and then we had multiple discussions amongst our board of directors about the facts that were presented and ultimately made a decision. By a vote of 50 in favor, 3 against, we voted to support Greenway, the vision for the trail only, with 5 abstentions. So just want to put that out there and talk about our process and end on the note that I'm very grateful that you guys are doing this, inviting both sides to come to the table and have this discussion. I think that is a mark of transparency, and I wish more of the local jurisdictions would do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Good evening. My name is Paul Ellerick. I'm an Aptos resident. Lived there for 50 years. I have to tell you that Capitola is almost my hometown because I probably travel through it more than anybody. Anyway, I wanted to just bring up 2 points. Measure D. Measure D was passed with the hope for passenger rail at some time. Without that in Measure D, it never would have passed. Never. There was nothing in there for people that wanted a transit, a line that would let people move around. And I think people are forgetting that. The other thing I would like to remind people that we need transit to move people. We need people that live farther from work than they can walk or ride their bike. I cannot imagine getting up in the morning and riding a bike or hiking, 4 or 5 miles to work when I could ride a train or something that gets me there. I can even less imagine at the end of the day when I'm totally pooped, especially if I'm working with my back, to get home the same way. So we need transit for people, and we need trails and we need bikes too, and they're nice. But we need transit. We need transit to move people, and I hope that you listen to what everybody says tonight. But my position is to listen to what the RTC says after they finish their studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Dean Cutter, and I live on Nova Drive, just at the lower 41st. And with all due respect to the gentleman who just spoke, I voted for Measure D because it funded other things besides the train, and I am not for the train. Okay, so there's almost everybody I know who is for trail only voted for Measure D. With that said, I've been teaching here in Santa Cruz since 1989. I work right now at New Brighton Middle School. I've been there for about 9 years. I walk to work every day through town. And, back in the early 90s, I used to take my 6th graders riding bicycles all the way to Wilder Ranch on a Saturday. They couldn't believe it. It was a wonderful experience. I've been considering doing it now, but it's just too dangerous. My son, coming home a couple of years ago from New Brighton Middle School, obeying all the rules, went over the hood of a vehicle coming down the hill there from New Brighton into town, in the daily congested on that road there, and a car pulled in front of him, and there's many incidents every year between students and vehicles from New Brighton Middle School. There's so much congestion from people dropping their kids off and picking them up, and the most common reason cited that parents are driving their kids is it's inconvenient for them to walk or ride, and number one, it's unsafe. A lot of my students live near me over in the Nova zone, and their parents drive them. Now, I find that really sad. If that trestle was available, it's a flat thoroughfare, it's straight, and there's no cars, and I guarantee you they would use it. As you know, it's against the law to use skateboards. You would be amazed how far a kid could go on a skateboard. They can go for miles on those darn things, but they don't, at least from my neighborhood. Oh, was that my time?
That's the wrap-up.
Oh, well, okay, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to have to turn the buzzer on, but it was a lot more gentle than the hook that we have in the back, so go ahead.
Good evening. My name's Miles Ryder. I'm a resident of Aptos, but I am married to a woman that grew up in Capitola. My kids did junior lifeguards. We got married at St. Joseph's Church. My daughter has a shop on 41st, and this is a little bit unique. When I was a little boy, we farmed the Jewel Box and strawberries. I have a couple of suggestions or requests to the council and the other city officials that may be looking at this issue, and it won't take a consultant to do it. One is ride an e-bike, but the second more important one is walk the length of the rail corridor in the city of Capitola from 35th Avenue to the other side of New Brighton Beach. And with that, when you do that, I think you can do it in a couple hours. Do it with the measuring tape and do it with the existing plan of the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail Plan. You'll learn something, I believe, that the rail with trail has no trail in Capitola. There is a trail, there will be a trail from 35th Avenue to 47th. It'll be very narrow in the busiest part of the county and of the city. It'll be 8 feet wide, and the 2-foot shoulders that allow it to be called 12 are really not functional because they got a 54-inch fence on one side, and in most places a 10-foot building on the other. And once so at 47th Avenue, you drop down into the village, come up, as mentioned by Bud, on Monterey. There's no way, and then the important walk is along Park and to New Brighton Beach. There'll never be a trail there.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, my name is Jim Meckes. I live in Santa Cruz, born at the other end of the county. I think Capitola would be proud to claim its history. And part of that history has been defined by rail public transit. 140 years ago, F.A. Heen, sometimes called the father of this town, built a rail line to Capitola. And Capitola was definitely a destination, not just a waypoint. I hear claims today you can't run significant traffic on a single rail line. Yet in 1884, 3 trains a day were bringing 1,250 people here to Capitola from San Francisco every day for Camp Capitola, which we heard, Hotel Capitola, the lovely beach. That's according to Sandy Leiden. Today, 130 years later, we could carry far more people more quietly and efficiently to local destinations and beyond. We need this transportation corridor to be accessible to all, not just the young and able-bodied that'll use it in good weather. Did you notice earlier this week how few bikes there were on the road in the rain and how the car traffic increased? The same is true after dark. Do you want a less provincial vision? Look to Europe, with less car traffic, using electric trolleys or streetcars on rails to quietly and efficiently move masses of people and bicycles. We can do this. Prague has virtually silent streetcars, and modern technology can even eliminate the need for overhead wires or charged rails, recharging at stops in less than a minute. Higer buses, it's a brand, incorporate this instant recharge technology today. Israel just bought another 100 of them for Tel Aviv. Some would propose rail banking and tearing out existing rails since we're not ready to build today, but the odds of ever getting approvals to reinstall rails is slim to none, especially from the Coastal Commission. Think about this. Mike Rotkin has said that when he was mayor of Santa Cruz, he was able to build the bike and pedestrian path across Westcliff Drive in Santa Cruz, and that would not be possible today with our current Coastal Commission. By comparison, new rail after rail banking would be impossible.
Thank you.
So I ask you to support Rail and Trail.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Ryan Sarnataro. I live over the line in Live Oak, but I used to live a couple of hundred yards from here in Riverview. And when I lived in the village, it was nice to see the train go over the trestle every once in a while and toot its horn. But the new proposal would have trains stopping traffic on Monterey 60 times a day. And if you think about that and you think about what the effect of rail is going to be throughout the entire county, not only separating the communities with the fence, but actually separating communities with the rails, with the trains themselves, you've got a real issue there. I think from a fiscal point of view, it's really clear that there's a tremendous difference between building a wide trail and leaving the tracks in and hoping in the future that you'll be able to fund it. Last thing I want to say on this is that coming in with a wide trail, the Greenway vision, is a bit of a blank slate. It allows for new kinds of transportation technologies that are coming down the line that will allow people to move much more quickly and efficiently on a flat surface. And I think that flat surface is really important. Today, I actually rode my bike from Privates, where I have a key, to Aptos, where I go to the gym. And yeah, I had to go through the village. I had to go up that hill, which is a little bit scary because there's not that much room for a bike going up Monterey. And then when you go out towards New Brighton, heck, there's a piece of the road that's kind of fallen in, and you got to actually go in the middle of traffic if you're on a bicycle. Meanwhile, those tracks are just sitting there, just waiting to be used. You've got an unused resource that will sit there for many years if you leave those tracks in place. So I urge you to actually make the decision now rather than wait for a study that's just going to confirm what we're saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. My name is Mike Setti. I currently live in the Napa Valley, but I'm a native of PG, Pacific Grove, over in Monterey. And there's a lot of things here that I'd like to address, but I don't have time, so I'm just going to stick to the important points. I'm also been a transportation consultant for 40 years, and I also work part-time, $800 a month, wow, for the Train Riders Association of California. You should have gotten, there's newspapers out on the bench in the lobby. I think, as someone who's lived in several places that's overrun with tourists, like Santa Cruz, I think you have to be less provincial here. Here you have a group that's managed to get out a large number of people. Well, I don't know what that really means other than they were good organizers. But I can tell you in the Napa Valley, 30 years later, after we had the same kind of opposition to the wine train, everybody's happy that it's there. And now we're talking about seriously running commuter service on that line, which is privately owned. The other thing I just wanted to address is when I hear the term 19th century technology, I just have to laugh because concrete is 2nd century BC Roman technology. Anyway, the point is, I did hand out a paper here about ridership, and just to say, just to summarize what's in here, there are the model that I use in this, which is statistical, based on statistical regression, is the same one that the consultants did for the rail study. The problem with that study is they didn't consider things like extending the line a half a mile downtown Santa Cruz or a positive connection to Cabrillo College. The point is that I could see where you could double or triple the ridership if you connected the right points and provided the right kind of service. The details are in here, and if there's any questions, I would gladly answer them. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. I'm Robert Stevens. I'm a resident of Aptos, but I started the Capitola After School Daycare in the late 70s. and it's now Kids Campus Connection, which there's one over here in Jade Street. And this brings me to my first main point. Capitola is a wonderful seaside village. I think that's why all of you came to live here. It's bifurcated by the canyon that Soquel Creek creates. This trestle enables Capitola to become a walkable village that would be so nice if kids could go to Jade Street from over in Depot Hill, and vice versa if you want to go from the Jewel Box to Capitola Elementary. I think more and more cities are trying to become walkable, livable cities, and that's what you want here in Capitola. And I wanted to say something also about the iconic trestle. I think that would have to be replaced with the train. Do you want that replaced? Is that what residents of Capitola want in their village, their quiet village? And about bicycles, I think if you look at Europe, people have talked about trains, but you need to look at Amsterdam and Copenhagen, where up to 25% of the population rides a bike. Yes, they have way worse weather than we have here, but it's just changing people's mindsets. I think with a great greenway, we could move a lot of people, keep this place quiet, and a walkable village to live, and I really implore you to vote on this before the RTC study is done. This is your only chance to have some say in this. Otherwise, Capitola will just be left behind. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to take the opportunity to recognize two council members that are in attendance from other cities. Felipe Hernandez is out there. So is Rochelle Naroyan. Thank you very much. Dedicated public servants came this way just to see and hear. So carry on.
Hi, my name is Barry Scott. I'm from Aptos, and I would like to follow up and after what Robert Stevens said and say, please don't vote. Don't sidetrack a process that's underway right now. I should ask you to think about all the cities that you may have visited that had wonderful bike infrastructure that you see on the internet, and then check around and see whether or not they don't also have wonderful rail transit. They almost always do. Streetcars, trains, and this is kind of a universal truth. The trestle comes up often, and a lot of conversations have been had, and I've read the master plan and I've read the passenger rail feasibility study I don't know how many times. The trestle likely, someday it's going to need to be replaced. And the idea is that we might fund an iconic rail combined, integrated, wonderful, safe, new bike and pedestrian walkways within that rail structure that would also, provide transit for people. I don't want to spend too much time countering some of the claims that were made in the presentation by Greenway, but there are plenty of them, and I can do that in a separate email or something. But I would say that there was one of the scenarios was $93 million, including soft costs and contingencies, that took us all the way to Pajaro, a starter service. So let's look at all seven if we're going to look at one. Train congestions caused by a two-car train. I've timed it at other rail systems with two-car trains. It's 45 seconds. The gates go down, the gates come up. Every, 20 minutes? It's not a big deal. But the most important thing I want to say, and I don't think I've heard it brought up before, is that I'm from Aptos. This is Capitola. But you know what? That's kind of like my trestle out there. That's a 32-mile-long piece of infrastructure that was bought with state taxpayer money. So it really belongs to California, and it belongs to Watsonville, and I think it needs to serve as many people as possible in as many ways as possible. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Josh. I'm from Santa Cruz. Thank you all for hosting a well-moderated debate. It's a shame your peers in Scotts Valley couldn't show both sides of this issue, so I'm glad to see you guys being diligent in this matter. When I see the Greenway presentations, I see nothing but special interest amongst developers, berry farmer CEOs pretending to act like concerned community members, and what appears to be lobbied support from the Santa Cruz Business Council given their reluctance to specify which businesses are actually in support of Greenway. Greenway seems to ignore Watsonville commuters and those who lack limbs. You simply cannot expect people power to get you across 20 miles of travel in a community that sees frequent rains. Greenway also ignores equality. Not everyone can afford electric bikes and other whimsical, unknown technologies of the future. It is also baffling to expect that a 100-plus-year-old trestle in Capitola can now be repurposed to carry people. It needs to be replaced, and there is no question about it. I am here today to speak in support of the current Rail with Trail plan. When Highway 17 shut down during the harsh rains of 2016, it was a total public transportation nightmare. It took upwards of 2.5 hours to get over to San Jose from Santa Cruz, going nearly the exact same route of our rail line with the Pajaro connection. We can connect with the main line and towards bigger possibilities with a quicker solution towards cross-county commuting. We need rail and trail in coexistence, not missed opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My name's Charlie Zimmerman. I live in Santa Cruz, and I'm here to speak on behalf of maintaining the opportunities that we have with the rail that is in place now. I think that
Charlie, can I get you to stay a little closer to the microphone?
Sure.
Good. Thank you.
I think that what we should do is, first of all, we have to understand that this is a transportation corridor. So it's got to service a lot more than just people on bikes. And as the fellow in front of previous to me said, expecting people from Watsonville to commute to Santa Cruz on a bike is not something that I can imagine happening very often. So we have, also I'd like to say is that I think we should look at what we have here. We've got this incredible this rail that's already in place. I mean,
Charlie, you can talk to me. It's okay. Come on.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I'm up there too.
Yeah, you're everywhere. Trust me.
I think what you have to look at what we have. We have this incredible asset right now that you have to look at the vision of what's the potential, what's the possibility of it. We're living in an age where a few years ago, who could imagine driverless cars everywhere? And so you take this, one of the things that's great about this forum is that we've learned a lot of facts. One of the things I learned tonight was that the old trains were 250 tons, the new ones are 50. So when you have this kind of a system that's already in place, these rails that are already there, just think of the potential of how they can be used to whiz people, lots of people, and people that can't bike around this county. And you notice it goes from every city, boom, 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 except Scotts Valley, but it goes right along and close to the center of all the towns. So it's a great opportunity to move a lot of people in a very safe way. So I think that in conclusion, we should look at the timing. Let's look at preserving our opportunity by waiting to see what the potential is, because there's lots of potential for this corridor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good evening. My name's Chris Curtis. I'm a Aptos resident. Grew up in Aptos, grew up riding my bike up to Pleasure Point to surf before school every morning. Used to do it all the time. I don't ever ride my bike in town anymore. I recently had to drop my car off at an automobile shop to get some work done in Pleasure Point and had to ride my bike back to my house in Aptos, and it was frightening. Much of the traffic on Highway 1, I think, in the mornings and in the evenings during the winter months comes from school transportation, kids getting dropped off and picked up from school. And I think that a lot of the schools in the South County are far from the train stations that could potentially service those students. I don't know that it would necessarily alleviate traffic in the Aptos area with a train. In the summer months, much of the traffic is from people coming outside the county, into the county, to spend their dollars here with us. Thank them. But I don't think that those trains will alleviate any of the traffic in the summer because they're these people coming from the outside in, and we want them here. My understanding is that creosote is what's the ties are soaked in, and then there's arsenic that was sprayed along the tracks back in the day to kill the weeds. What type of environmental hazards are created with cleaning up the tracks for rail or trail? How much does that cost? What does it look like? I don't know anything about that. It's an issue of mine, and I am pro-trail. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is James Susaimuthu. I live here on Jade Street in Capitola.
I'm supporting the Green Bay plan because it seems to be the most thoughtful and well thought out plan. And I actually work in Watsonville, and I commute either direction every day. I can't imagine using the train because it is not going to take me to the place where I want to go. I also have kids who like to ride bikes. Currently, it's very unsafe to let them go on their own. I feel that having a safe corridor would be very helpful for the kids to ride the train, ride their bikes. So I actually like to urge the council to vote now so that they can actually speak and have any voice to stop the current progress on what RTC is doing right now.
Thank you. Hello.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Jenny Sarmiento. I'm from Watsonville. I live in Watsonville, actually. I've lived in Santa Cruz County for close to 25 years. North, Mid, South County now. South County is my home. So I would like to say that you consider this carefully because it has a major impact on the entire county, especially in Watsonville. We're talking about people riding the bus, and perhaps they don't ride it as often. Why? Because the traffic is so congested that it doesn't make any difference whether you take the bus or you drive your own car. I believe that the rail is the solution because it will allow a lot of people to come to Capitola, Santa Cruz, and that's the majority of the workforce. So if you look at this as a social justice issue, and we look at the entire county and think of what are we doing to our workforce, and keep those in mind. I don't believe that parents can afford, especially in South County, to buy a $1,000 bike, and they will not use it. So that is not a real solution. It's not a practical solution, and I want to be able to say that the rail is the best option that we have right now. The traffic will never get better. We cannot find alternatives to driving from Watsonville to Santa Cruz. There's no other place, so this is the only option that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor, council members. My name is Bruce Sawhill from Santa Cruz. So there was some discussion earlier about how many people use the bus system. It's about 15,500, if I heard Bud right, and on a budget of about $50 million a year. So even the most pessimistic rail estimates are cheaper per capita than the bus. But that's not the point I want to make. The point I want to make is that in order to get more people to ride the bus, build the rail. The reason this makes some sense is that bus has greater geographical reach, but is unreliable and slow because of traffic, as the last speaker said. Rail has less geographical reach, but is faster and more reliable. By combining a rail backbone with bus feeder routes, we get the best of reliability, reach, and speed. Shorter bus routes can carry more people and get more work out of fewer buses. It also seems to be an unspoken assumption that a rail system would require a new tax measure to build or operate. Now that we're a self-help county and the state is going big on rail with the state rail plan, we have a good chance of leveraging our current investment in Measure D in the rail line by a large amount, enough to build a basic system. If we were to integrate bus and rail, we could also transport more people for the same metro budget than we currently do. No additional taxes. Recently, I also read that Capitola is considering emulating Abbott Square in Santa Cruz. This is totally unnecessary. The village is already a bigger and better Abbott Square, full of great places to hang out, shop, eat, and meet. The only problem is that the village is drowning in cars. Think how much nicer it would be if it were full of pedestrians who had arrived by bike and rail, and all the space devoted to parking was devoted to higher value uses like housing and businesses. And it's hard to get to. From the west side of Santa Cruz, it's less stressful at times for me to get to San Francisco than the village. As Yogi Berra said, it's so crowded nobody goes there anymore. So let the UCS process finish. Let your public servants do the work you hired them for. Thank you.
Thank you. Greetings, Karin.
Good evening, Karin Hanna. Thanks for the plug for the village.
And thanks for the Yogi Berra reference. I loved it. Yeah.
I live in Santa Cruz, but obviously work and own property in Capitola. Capitola has, well, I understand this is a countywide issue, but Capitola has some specific issues that you really have to take into consideration. Obviously, the crossing at 47th and the crossing at Monterey. When the arms come down on 47th, all the traffic on Portola stops in both directions because there's only like one room for one stacking car to get off of Portola. So everybody going in both directions has to stop while everybody who's waiting to turn on 47th sits there. And same thing on Monterey. It'll block entrances and exits from the parking lot. So I think that's more unique to Capitola than some of the other crossings, although I think crossings are a big problem for the train. And the other thing about Capitola is that the area where people will be forced off of the trail into the village doesn't have adequate bike lanes, probably some of the worst in the county. And going down Monterey Avenue, if you're not an experienced cyclist, can cause problems because of the narrowness, and it's scary and people crash, and yeah, it's not good. I'm a cyclist. I commute to work. Rain, not an issue. It doesn't rain enough or hard enough here, unfortunately, to cause a problem for any serious commuter. We all have rain gear. E-bikes are going to change the way people ride bikes for commuting. I have one. It's changed the way I ride, where I ride, how far I ride. The reality is a 20 or 25 mile bike ride with an e-bike on a flat surface with no cars is no problem. Absolutely no problem. Also, no parking lots. Where the hell are all the people who ride the train going to put their cars? In the neighborhood. And we know in Capitola, we love people parking in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Karen. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Wynn. I'm a resident of La Salva Beach. At one time I had my office in Capitola. I'm a lawyer. Recently, La Salva Beach had an Improvement Association meeting where we invited both sides to partake. The community overwhelmingly rejected the RTC's plan. Now, why? We're going to spend $500 million for a diesel train that replaces the existing tracks. That's going to provide ridership for 5,500 people based on the RTC's own study. That makes no sense. The train is going to lose between $10 and $14 million a year. That makes no sense. And finally, there's a recent study out of the Central Coast Wetlands Group, the Moss Landing Marine Labs, which identifies the climate effects of global warming on the county. Included in the study was the fact that 1.4 miles of the track in La Salva Beach is vulnerable to coastal erosion within the next 60 years. So does it make sense for a public entity to authorize the expenditure of $500 million over 10 years, that's going to lose $10 to $14 million a year, and then possibly be gone? I strongly ask you to reject the RTC's proposal.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mayor, council members, Alex Clifford, CEO of Santa Cruz Metro. I'm just going to speak very briefly. I'm here to support your staff recommendation. I think it's a very good recommendation that you continue to leave your options open until the Unified Corridor study is complete and you have good data and good analysis with which to look at these different proposals and make a decision. I'm not here to be in favor or against rail, in favor against trail, in favor against rail and trail. I'm not here for any of that. As a matter of fact, one of the scenarios covered by your staff at the outset of this meeting was that one of those scenarios being studied in the Unified Corridor is a bus rapid transit, a BRT and trail option. I'm not going to spend a moment of your time trying to advocate for that because I'm here just to ask you to wait. Keep your powder dry. Let the process be complete. Have that data before you, and then that's the time, I think, personally, for you to really look at which option is the best for Capitola.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Patrick Thomas. I live in Santa Cruz. I'm a mechanical engineer that used to work over the hill. And just to give you a data point for sort of what's possible for cyclists, as I lived in Santa Cruz and would bike commute to Palo Alto. So you might want to just take that when people are saying that you can't bike certain distances from Watsonville to, say, Santa Cruz. Granted, I'm maybe on the extreme side of the scale.
We'll go with that. We'll go with that.
But the reference to e-bikes could basically make anybody to that level instantly. And so arguing the merits, plus or minus, of a rail to transport people, I'm maybe not going to weigh in too much on that. But for me, as a cyclist that could actually get somewhere on the bike and basically replace a car on the road, if it were to be a rail and trail, I would actually not use the the rail as a rail and trail, because it would be too slow and too congested with other users, as they referenced with the high speed and low speed users. With the trail only option, you can you can sort of differentiate those. But if it gets sidelined to the side and it's sharing the corridor with a train at the same time, then it would basically not be useful for me to use, or someone similar to me that was actually doing it, or somebody on an electric bike that could be essentially the equivalent. And then the dangers, as far as when you, and I also did that commute 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. So when it rains, people would ask me, what do you do when it rains? You get wet. So the number one, I think the number one thing when the weather does turn poor would be visibility of other cars hitting you when you're on a bike. So that would be the number one reason for not riding.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Good evening. Bring this down for short people. Hi, my name is Susie Merriam. I am actually a lifetime resident of Santa Cruz. I went to New Brighton Middle School and SoCal High School, and I've also worked in Watsonville for the last 16 years. The train provides a commute alternative through the county. It's a win for bikes with the bike path, and it's a win for commuters to relieve traffic in town. Our South County residents, many of them work in the service industry here in Capitola and in Santa Cruz. They are not going to be riding bikes at 5, 6 in the morning to Santa Cruz, especially in the winter months when we've got bad weather, especially for women. They're not going to be riding their bikes alone. They're not going to be coming home in the dark riding their bikes alone on a path. Also, what I've noticed is my daughter goes to dance in Capitola, and she goes to New Brighton Middle School. We have got horrible in-town traffic, and a lot of that in-town traffic is people coming from over the hill and heading to their homes in the south, whether that be from Scotts Valley to Santa Cruz, from Santa Cruz to Capitola, Capitola to Aptos. It's a logjam. I live up by Dominican Hospital, and to get my daughter to Dance Center on Bay Avenue in the afternoon usually takes at least 30 minutes. Without traffic, it's about 7. So if we were able to give all of those people driving through our towns an alternative to get on a train, we would relieve a lot of the traffic in all of our neighborhoods. What I heard tonight was really interesting because I hadn't thought of it before. It sounds like the path, the bike and pedestrian path planned in Capitola is not going to be going along the rail trail. If Capitola is worried about that, and that's a really valid point, let's work on fixing the existing plan. Let's move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bring the mic. Here we go.
Okay. I'm Sydney Ayrton, and I go to New Brighton. And I think it would be good to have a train, and also I think it would be really dangerous to have people riding their bikes in the rain. And it would also, the train would give me a ride to dance, and I go to dance in Capitola and Aptos, and traffic is horrible all the time when I need to go. And a lot of people who work can't always ride bikes, and so they would just not do that, and it would be bad. Also, if you have a bunch of people riding bikes, on one trail, some would be behind someone that would be slower, and they would want to pass, but they couldn't, and it could create car crashes, so that would be really bad too.
Your partner doesn't want to say anything?
No.
Okay, thank you. Felipe, welcome. It's great to see you here.
My second time here in Capitola at the council meeting.
Don't be a stranger.
Last time I wasn't even a council member when I was here. I even forgot what issue it was. So my name is Felipe Hernandez, a council member at the City of Watsonville. And I'm here to kind of state a little bit about our situation in Watsonville, which I believe the traffic situation that we have is a regional problem, and we have to address it as a region. You know, the majority of North County's economy, including Aptos, the malls, the boardwalk, all the hotels, the restaurants, is a workforce that comes from Watsonville. The majority is from Watsonville, and they spend hours in traffic for these low-wage jobs. You know, all the places that we have, from all the different hotels that we have, you go back to any of the restaurants, you go back to where they're cooking the food, the majority are going to be Latino, and majority are going to be from Watsonville. So we have to keep rail as a viable solution. You know, I also believe we have to expand Highway 1, but we have to keep investing in the rail system so that we can alleviate some of the traffic congestion on Highway 1. And I think that in the future, it's the other viable thing is that if we can connect Watsonville to Monterey County, to Salinas, and eventually to Gilroy, to the rail system that the state has proposed. I think that's important. If we can connect all those, then it becomes a regional hub where we can bring tourism into this area. So thank you very much. Let's not be short-sighted. Let's continue to connect all our region together and work together on these big issues like the traffic congestion as a region. Thank you.
Thank you, Felipe. Welcome, Rochelle.
Thank you. Good evening. Hello,
Good evening.
council members. I'm here tonight because I realized that this is a regional issue that needs a regional solution, and that I don't think we can solve this sitting in our own silos and only thinking about the immediate area around us when we're considering the need to address transportation. And like my colleague from Watsonville mentioned, this impacts thousands of people. And we have instances where when Forever 21 in Santa Cruz opened, around 300 applicants from the Watsonville area applied for jobs for a business in downtown Santa Cruz. So I think we need to make sure that we keep this on track, we keep with the plan that we have to look at all of the possibilities along the rail trail. It's really important that we don't cut ourselves off to fully utilizing what's the only undeveloped north-south corridor that we have left in our county. And so I would just ask council members in Capitola, my colleagues, as we're making decisions for our whole region, that you really do consider keeping with the process and honoring the motion that you have before you, to not close the door to the possibilities of what that north-south corridor could be. I don't know if it's going to be a train. I don't know if it's going to be greenways only. I'm pretty open to what that becomes, but what I don't want to do is close myself off to hearing what all of the possibilities are to fully utilize that space. And so I hope that before we make any decisions as council members going forward, we do wait for those studies. And I appreciate the time that you gave for the community to come and discuss this tonight.
Great. Thank you, Councilwoman. Can I have a show of hands? Who are the other people who would like to speak tonight? Got it. Well, you better get in line, boys. Oh, then we got a mic for you. Nope, no problem. We got you. Okay, I just wanted to get an idea.
Well, I had written comments, but in the interest of not repeating, I've totally changed it, so we'll see how it comes out. My name is Ron Goodman. I first became involved with the rail trail as a People Power board member about 25 years ago when the idea was first brought to our board. And at the time, we strongly advocated, and for 25 years I continued to advocate for passenger rail in Santa Cruz County. And I worked really hard for that, and it was really hard for me when I finally realized that what I'd been working on for 25 years didn't make sense to me anymore. It happened at a public event where I saw people coming up to our booth and we were trying to justify our position and couldn't. But despite the unfortunate animosity that an issue like this creates, I want to say thank you to Fort and the RTC and Greenway and all the groups on both sides, because I do think, I mean, to me, it's amazing how much people care about this, and I know that people don't agree about all this stuff, but there's a lot we do agree about. We all agree that we should address climate change. This is especially important for a city like Capitola that has so much beachfront. We all agree that gridlock hurts our community and that a trail has significant potential transportation and recreational value. And I think we all agree that public transportation, whether it be bus or train, has the potential to help address these issues, to have social injustice benefits as well. But the plans aren't the same. They really are choosing different things. And what I would say to you, I guess my last comment is that this is a chance for you to talk. Nobody is saying you need to make a decision. I appreciate Rochelle's comment. You shouldn't make a decision. You don't need to cut things off. Your statement is not a statement that's going to determine what the RTC does. It's a statement of your opinion about how you feel on the issue. And I think for you to not make that statement means you're losing. This is your chance to speak, just like it's our chance to speak.
Thank you. Greetings.
Greetings.
Bring that mic down for you. There you go.
Hi, I'm Dina Jones from Scotts Valley. We come in this area all the time. My mom's in SoCal and my son's going to Cabrillo. And we spend a lot of time, almost an hour on the road, getting from Scotts Valley to Cabrillo all the time. And I think the light rail will help lessen all the commute for all the students at Cabrillo College, which is a big consideration. And I just hope you work with the process and take time to make this decision since it's so important. For perspective, my father-in-law used to work for the city of Los Angeles, and when he started working, they were tearing out the rails. And he was also part of the program that put the rails back in. And I looked it up. They took them out in 1971, and they put them back in 1990. So the rails are very useful. So thank you.
Thank you. And before we have the next podium speaker up, could I get the microphone to the gentleman in the back? So you got it? Okay. Do you know how to turn it on? Maybe Sam's story. Maybe you can give him a hand there. Perfect. It's all yours now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You're on.
Thank you. My name is Sebastian DiFrancesco. I live in Santa Cruz. Every year, I'd like to thank Capitola for inviting the Wounded Warrior program, Operation Surf, in the town. I am also a Wounded Warrior. I am also a 5-time Paralympian who travels around the world and does a lot of exercising. I have several bikes that I use with my wheelchair and without my wheelchair. Unfortunately, it's very dangerous to ride a bike in a wheelchair in the area because the way I sit very low to the ground and my center of gravity is very low, so I have more stability. But it's very dangerous. With the rail, I support Greenway, and with the rail, it would be very accessible to me and my fellow warriors who come into town to walk down with their families to enjoy every part of the ocean in this county. And this is why I'm here, to support Greenway.
Thank you very much. And by the way, this year we have the honor of hosting the opening ceremonies for Operation Surf for the Wounded Warrior, so I hope to see you down there. Next speaker.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is William Menchine. I've been a resident in Santa Cruz since 1973. And I'm an unapologetic cyclist. I was one of the founders of the bicycle trip. So if you bought a bicycle in the 70s or to the mid-80s, it was probably me on the other side of the counter. I wanted to mention something that's come up several times tonight about the idea of not taking a stand. And I think that one of the other things I should mention about myself is that I'm a 14-year member of the RTC's Bicycle Advisory Committee, as over those years, either as a voting member or as an alternative to the 3rd District. And in terms of public process, the reason that we're here tonight is because the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail Plan never had an alternatives analysis as part of that plan. It was something that this is not a new idea, the idea of having a trail-only approach, and that it's, as you probably are aware, the vast majority of rail trails are done as rail-to-trail conversions, something like 90% of them nationwide. The RTC chose not to do an alternatives analysis, and as a result, they had sort of a circular logic. Because it was a rail with trail plan that shared the corridor, there was no reason to look at any other type of option. So where we are now is in this unfortunate position of this idea that you can split the corridor and have both things. It's a twofer. You can have both things. The reality is you can't do both things well. And so one way to look at it is optimizing the rail corridor for active transportation and thinking about doing whatever it takes in terms of integrating the other corridors as part of the Unified Corridor Investment Study to make transit work on the freeway corridor. And we heard somebody say tonight that there really are no options or no alternatives. Well, I disagree strongly with that statement. I think that a dedicated transit lane operating in the freeway, bidirectional north-south, with direct access ramps at all of the critical overpasses, so 41st Avenue, Dominican Hospital, Freedom Boulevard, that sort of thing, Santa Cruz, and ways to get to UCSC and Watsonville would be a game changer. Anyway,
thank you.
I strongly suggest that you quit that process.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening, council members. My name is Piet Cannon from Ecology Action, and Ecology Action has been working on the rail corridor issue for some 20 years. And in that time, a lot of that was spent to advocating for public agencies, the Regional Transportation Commission, to purchase the rail corridor from the private owner and put it into public ownership. So we're excited that it's in public ownership and that the city of Capitola is having this discussion in terms of what are the best uses of the corridor and what other studies and information has come out before that. And it's a complex issue. Over the 20 years, it's changed in terms of the different studies that looked at it and what are the uses that could be put in the corridor. But there's no doubt about it that in terms of sustainable transportation, the corridor is underutilized, and that hopefully the future won't be too far away. By the end of this year, the first section of rail trail will be built on the west side of Santa Cruz, and people will be able to use it for bike and for walking and active transportation. So I applaud you for having this open discussion, because I think it's important for the people of Capitola and the people of Santa Cruz and elsewhere to find out more about this issue and to look at it. And hopefully it puts us in a place where we can get more uses out of the corridor and better uses, and it's not a question of bike and pedestrian against rail transit. It's finding a system that can work best for everybody and utilizing the best of what those different sustainable transportation options offer. Because as many speakers have said, traffic is horrible, and unfortunately, in terms of climate change, all the cars that we drive around every day contribute to greenhouse gas emissions, and so we want to reduce that. And so from Ecology Action, I'd like to say, thank you for having this presentation. Thanks to all the people in the audience for being engaged, for finding out. And finally, we ask you to, the Unified Corridor Plan, to wait until that's done to make your final analysis and have a decision.
Thank you
very much.
Who let this guy in here?
Good.
No, I'm only kidding. Former Mayor Dennis Norton, welcome.
Thank you very much. I probably sat through 35 public hearings on this issue, so I'm fairly versed on this thing. I sat 12 years as your regional commissioner on this issue, and I was intimately involved with the purchase of this corridor. And I'm glad we've come to this point, and a community discussion is the right time right now. Although I do agree that it's not a time for decision making, it's a time for moving back to the RTC and let them finish the public process. I've been fortunate in my life that have time to actually, I've walked the full corridor. Is there anybody else can claim that? Good. There are people that have done that. Yes. Yeah. I'll read to us. It's not all beautiful. It's scenic, but it's not all beautiful. There's sections that, it's a scenic corridor, but otherwise. You could not have placed this rail corridor in a more perfect position. Half the population of this county lives within 1 mile of this corridor. Their opportunity for recreation and public transit fits well to this corridor. Fortunately, unfortunately or not, but Capitola itself was built because of this whistle stop that we have at this point, the other side of the bay being Pacific Grove. Public discussion here is important, but I do think that you need to stand your back and don't make any decisions until this corridor, the RTC is through with this project. It's important to have their part of the public process before you make a final decision on how you stand on it. Thank you for your time. Appreciate
Thank you, Dennis. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Karena. I live in Live Oak. I'm speaking as a county resident, and I rode my bike here today. What I'd like to say is I don't want to express opinions for or against specific alternatives, but I'd like to advocate for this body to be responsible and wait until the facts are available. The Measure D, people voted. In fact, 83,816 people in our county, that's a huge majority, asked for an economic and environmental analysis of uses of the rail corridor. That is what the Unified Corridor Study is. That is what's underway. Let's wait for the facts. Let's continue this robust community discussion when we have real information available. Right now, there's a lot of speculation, there's a lot of conjecture, there's a lot of emotion. We are a passionate community, and that's one of the things I love about our community, but that's also one of the challenging things for you as an elected body to deal with. So I encourage you strongly to wait for the facts before you make any decisions that have such a big regional impact on our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
To see me. I think I'm the last speaker.
You're the last word. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, no, there's someone behind you. See, as soon as you say that, they start lining up again. Okay.
My name is Nancy Connolly, and I'm a 28-year resident of Santa Cruz. I grew up on the East Coast, and I rode my bike. I walked in the rain, in the snow, in the sun, for miles to school each way. I did that because it was safe, and it was rural. We didn't have a public transportation system, but we definitely have a transportation issue here. And the train or the trail is not the only solution. It's not the only option. We do have to deal with that, but I come with a view that the Greenway approach is the most economic way. It has economic benefits, it has health benefits, it has safety benefits, it has social equity benefits, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to all of us today, and I encourage you, as many of the previous speakers have stated, to wait until the Unified Corridor Study has been completed to make your decision. But I ask you to look with an open mind and forward thinking, and choose what you think is the best decision for the future of the community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Tom Evans. I am a resident of Capitola up in the Jewel Box. And I'm a very strong supporter of the Greenway. So what I wanted to just say today is, I mean, we've heard many times people asking the council here to sort of wait for the RTC, and obviously they are going to have the ultimate decision in this process. What I would ask for, though, is that the city of Capitola advocates for what the residents of Capitola want in this process. And from what I saw in the Vision of Capitola, which took place 2 years ago, and Bud mentioned it in his presentation, you know, the second most requested thing in the next 5 to 15 years of Capitola was a trail without a train. And it was a more than 6-to-1 margin for a trail without a train compared to a trail with a train. So I'm just bringing that up. This is not just my opinion. This was the findings from the Vision of Capitola, which was a broad survey of the residents of the city. Personally, as I said, I'm a very strong supporter of the Greenway option. I think if we look to the future, having a large, flat, paved path opens up all kinds of transportation options, and specifically having it divided into a higher speed, whether that be bike or e-bike option, versus people who are just locally pedestrian out walking their dog, provides a lot more active transportation options for the entire county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kerry Pico. I live in Rio Del Mar. I'm a numbers guy. Some of you know that, and so I'm going to jump into the numbers. I'm going to start with 59%. 59%, that means 6 out of 10 cars go from Highway 1 onto Highway 17 North. That means we're using 60% up there. Now that's at the split. At 41st Avenue, 5 out of 10 cars that go past 41st Avenue go on to 17 North. So we're servicing half the people with this train. It's not going to have the population. 300%. I want you to focus on that number. That's the amount of increase that the trail costs for a 2-mile section in Santa Cruz from Natural Bridges to Boardwalk. The price is increased for the trail construction. I'm talking about the cost of the trail only. It went 300% more because they didn't consider the terrain, the difficulty of the terrain. And so if you look at Park Avenue in that area, the terrain's impossible. And I'd also like to point out when they talk about an 8 to 12 foot or 12 to 16 foot trail, they're not including the 2-foot sides that have to be on the buffer zone so that you don't rub your elbows against the walls or the fences. And so it's really a lot more. And so I want you to picture from the center of the train all the way from this edge and all the way to that edge, at least that distance is what you're going to have to carve out. Okay, and that's all the way up and down the county. And there's so many more numbers that I can't start, and I've gotten lost on it. But feel free to ask me. I've got all the traffic numbers. I have an account inside Caltrans, and I can tell you exactly who's going where and when. And an HOV lane would take the ridership 23 minutes from Watsonville to Santa Cruz and back again. Okay?
Thank you. Greetings.
Hello. Again, thank you all for doing this tonight. It is a really important evening. My name is Gail McNulty, and I'm Executive Director for Santa Cruz County Greenway. I'm also a mother, a realist, and an optimist. We live in one of the most beautiful places on earth, and we are a community of outdoors lovers. I believe we are selling ourselves short if we don't install the best connected and protected bicycling and pedestrian infrastructure that we can, because we'll never know how many people will choose to bike and leave their cars at home until it's safe to do so. We're consistently rated one of the most dangerous places to ride a bike in California. We also need working transit, and Greenway is pro-transit. However, we believe that we need transit that we can afford to implement, improve, and maintain. We currently have a Metro bus system that moves 3 times the riders that the Rail Transit Feasibility Study from 2015 projected moving in their best case scenario. Those people depend on those buses, and those buses go places that the train will never go. Someone earlier mentioned LA. LA, when they started investing back into their rail, well, it was wonderful, except they had to defund their buses to do it. So now that community is supporting 2 major transit systems, and they have a lower total number of people using transit. Iowa Pacific. So when you planned this meeting, it was for information only. However, things have changed. Iowa Pacific is pulling out. We now, next week at the Regional Transportation Commission, will be looking at new rail carrier proposals. We need to enter very carefully into this new arrangement. We need to think about what we stand to lose. Tonight, Capitola has a chance to make a profound statement in defense of your residents and of all of the taxpayers in Santa Cruz County. As you think about what has been said tonight, please think about what the people of Capitola need. Think about the people who live and work under your trestle. Think about the children and the people that need safer ways to school and to work.
Thank you, Gail. I'm sensing that Gail had the last word. So what I'd like to do is I would like to bring back the 2 representatives, and I'd like to do Bud first so that Mark can have the last word since he was the first coming in.
Great. I've got 3 minutes.
And well, you've got 3 minutes, and then you will entertain questions by the council.
Great. Well, first of all, again, thank you very much for this. One thing I'd like to say, I think it's very hypocritical of people to say that we should wait for the UCIS while they are implementing Segment 7 and other elements of the rail trail. If you want to be fair, stop all work on the rail trail until the full results of the UCIS are known. You can't implement one but tell everyone else to wait until we get all the data, even though there's a ton of data available. Your opinion really matters. The UCIS is going forward. We've given lots of input into the UCIS. We've told them their evaluation criteria was bad. We've told them that the RTC staff is hopelessly biased towards the train, and we're very dubious of getting a fair unified corridor study. We've provided input on the scenario 1 analysis. So it's not that we're not giving input, and Capitola's input is very important to this process. We will get the UCIS. It's paid for. It's happening. Kimberly Horn is doing it. But we'd like to see Capitola weigh in. I'd like to specifically mention Watsonville because I spend a lot of time in Watsonville. I was the first investor in Digital Nest. The sales tax for the train is a regressive tax that is going to fall hardest on South County. Secondly, fares are unaffordable. Watsonville, Felipe is my friend. He said, well, we need trains for hospitality workers. Hospitality workers earn minimum wage. A round-trip train fare, 20 miles on the SMART train, is $15 round trip. You amortize that out. It's over $3,500 a year. Are you telling me that people are making minimum wage are going to pay 10 to 15% of their take-home pay in train fares? I don't think so when a bus fare is 1/5 the cost of a train fare. Relative to e-bikes, gosh, at $15 a day, in 67 days, you could pay for a $1,000 e-bike. Let's spend $65 million for 65,000 people in Watsonville and give everybody in the city an e-bike. That would be much cheaper. That would be much cheaper than spending $800 or $900 million on a train. And the train grade is 3%. So as many speakers have said, it's very possible to accomplish. I would like to speak to population, Sevilla and Prague, 2 cities that were mentioned. I love trains. I've been to Sevilla, I've been to Prague, but excuse me, Sevilla has a metro population of 1.5 million, Prague 1.5 to 2 million. So we're talking about municipalities that can make a train work. We have 262,000, as Carrie mentioned, 50% of them are going over Highway 17. So cut that population in half. And finally, I'll just say on the rainy days, if Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, and Chicago can do it, 20 rainy days a year, certainly Capitola and Santa Cruz County can do it. Thank you.
Not going to let you off that easy. I'll start on my left. Ed, you have any questions?
I'm fine.
Kristen, you're good. Jacques. Oh, so you were going to surprise me there for a minute, weren't you? Okay.
I do have so many questions. So you are advocates of making a position right now. I've been reading these studies also, and I've read the results of what you've put out. And quite frankly, trying to figure out which figures are correct and which figures aren't correct. What are the assumptions that are used to go into the actual analysis so that you could get something out of it at the end? And none of that's really there. The Unified Corridor Study is going to do that for us, and that is what I'm counting on. So I'd like you to tell me what you think about where is the public, this is my question, where is the public going to stand when they're trying to figure out how to compare things? How are they going to compare the cost of putting a rail line in here as opposed to a rail line somewhere else, and those data points are used to make a recommendation, let's say from Kimberly Horn? How are they going to decide on what is the relative cost, the cost to the fare person, the cost to the county, and the cost to actually build it, the cost to the county to operate, and the cost to the county to actually, run this day in and day out? How are they going to decide that without some way to make the apples and oranges a little bit more equal so that they can get a sense of how to compare things?
Well, Jacques, first I would say that forget about our studies, forget about the Greenway studies. The best sources of material for Greenway are the Rail Transit Feasibility Study and the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail Plan, RTC studies. We've walked the entire corridor with the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail Plan. And if you do that, as Miles Ryder suggested that each of you do, I think you will see that it's not buildable for environmental reasons, for cost reasons, and for engineering reasons. Even in segment 7, we learned today, there's another workaround. They didn't negotiate a lease with New Leaf Markets appropriately, and now it looks like it's going to go from Swift Street, down Swift Street, Ingalls, and back up. So we're looking at segment 7 is the easiest segment to implement, and now we're going to have a workaround in that. So I think you're seeing, if you go south of the San Lorenzo River, what you're going to see is the engineering issues just super complicated. And so I'm not asking you to believe our plan. I'm asking you to read the Rail Transit Feasibility Study and the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail Plan. Those are the best documents in support of Greenway. And I also think that I know that many of you and many of the people that have commented for Rail with Trail think that Kimberly Horn is going to bring down 2 tablets from the mountain like Moses and tell us exactly what to do. But I hate to tell you, it's not going to be like that. There's still going to be ambiguity. It's still going to be a political decision. All of you are going to have to weigh the interests of your constituency. I think that was very loud and clear tonight. Capitola residents, what they clearly prefer. And the numbers are going to be interpreted by various folks in different ways. So you can see from Mark's presentation and my presentation, we have very different views on this. So I think ultimately it's going to be a political decision, but I hope it's a political decision that's based on a system that our community can afford and that we can maintain and that provides the transit value that we all need.
Thank you. Any further questions? You're good? I have one for you. It's been brought up to me that the idea and the notion of a bikeway is sort of an entitled form of transportation, that it's an affluent form of transportation, and it doesn't really speak to social justice. Can you speak to that a little?
Yes, of course. Well, as I just mentioned, I'm very concerned about social justice. I spend a lot of my life working on it, and I would say that, first of all, bikes are the cheapest form of transportation. In fact, people earning less than $20,000 per year are twice as likely to have a bike as the rest of the population. Secondly, I mentioned the fares. As someone said in the city of Capitola, I won't quote who, rich people ride trains. And we here are talking about it as if it's some really low-cost transit method. Yes, in Europe, where the federal government in those countries subsidizes it dramatically, yes, it's a state-provided service. That isn't the model that we have in the United States. And so I think that the combination of the ubiquity and cheap and e-bikes particularly are coming down dramatically in price. I'm all for example, a no-interest loan program for people to buy bikes and e-bikes. There's lots of things that we could do to make it more affordable. But I wasn't kidding about creativity. We really have to be creative about the money we have. We're a poor county, right? Every single thing that we do, whether it's First Five or affordable housing or mental health services or whatever, requires money. So when we talk about subsidizing $10 to $12 million a year for a train system that's going to move a few people, I don't call that social justice. I call that a waste of taxpayer money and a poor investment for the real needs we have in this county, which we read about every day in the newspaper.
Great. Thank you. Council, any further questions? Jacques, follow-up?
Yeah, I do have. I think someone made a fairly good comment about when the rails are taken up and the trail is put in place, there's going to be a lot of environmental issues. Do you have any thoughts on that? Have you gone down that road?
Well, of course. I think putting a trail in next to the rail has similar environmental issues, by the way. The creatine and other things are sprayed all along the trail, so I think we're going to have mitigation in both cases. Certainly an environmental soils analysis will need to be done, and it'll have to be mitigated. The notion of pulling up the ties and the rails is actually a for-profit thing. We could recycle the rails and actually make money doing that. Hopefully some of that would mitigate the cost. But there's going to be mitigation required, I think, in either scenario.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bud.
Yep.
Mark? Welcome back.
Thank you.
He's going to stick with his presentation.
Okay, I think I'm ready to go.
You're set.
Thank you. I wanted to spend my closing comments on a few Greenway illusions. The first one is the beautiful picture that Bud shows of the 41st Avenue Greenway. If you add up the numbers on the bottom of that picture, it adds up to 28 feet. So the Greenway is 28 feet wide. The proposed rail and trail is 30 feet wide. So the question is, how can Greenway be constructed and not cut down any trees and not require any retaining walls and not require any new bridges when the rail and trail is required to build, cut down thousands of trees and miles of retaining walls and lots of new bridges? Doesn't make sense. Go out and measure from the railroad ties. Railroad ties are 8 feet. Take a tape measure out there when you're on that walk. Measure 10 feet from the end of a railroad tie and ask yourself, am I going to need a retaining wall? Am I going to cut down any trees? Secondly, Greenway claims to be half the cost of the rail trail. Here's their cost estimate. Here's the basis for their cost estimate. They've averaged arithmetically 5, quote, similar projects. Not one of these resembles the Greenway. In fact, one of the projects is the Great Allegheny Passageway that was built in Pennsylvania back in the 1980s and 90s. It's a single-lane, crushed limestone paved pathway. No wonder it cost $500,000 per mile. It has no resemblance to Greenway. Relying on Greenway facts and figures to make a decision would be a mistake. Lastly, you saw something similar to this earlier tonight. Greenway compares the cost of rail with trail to the cost of a Greenway only. First of all, their costs are way low. Second of all, what they're not telling you, what they're really not comparing is rail with trail is a mass transportation system. If you add a mass transportation system to the Greenway, then you have a real cost comparison. The least expensive thing right now is HOV lanes on Highway 1. They were estimated to be $585 million in 2013 dollars. That does not include the cost of 30 years of maintenance. That doesn't include a BRT system. That's the real picture. Greenway is way more expensive than rail with trail. So what should you do? I suggest we build the scenic coastal rail trail as soon as we possibly can. It's time to get people out of their cars into a safe place to ride and walk bicycles. Complete the Unified Corridor study. Let's get some reliable facts and figures before us. This is what was promised by Measure D. So that's my recommendation. Build it. While you're waiting, complete the Unified Corridor study, then decide. Thank you.
Council, Ed, questions?
I'm good.
You're good? Kristen?
No questions.
Your question, Jacques.
You know, it leads me to a question. I don't know. So, you know, I think it's the same thing. What's your take on the study that we're going to get in terms of making assumptions that we're going to be dependent on to come to conclusions? Making assumptions on comparative costs. You brought up an example where one was crushed rock and another one was something else. And all of the different comparables are going to be different. All the different comparables are going to be different. So how are we going to make those assumptions so that we could get a fairly accurate cost estimate before we even jump into this? What's your take on that?
Well, I'm a professional civil engineer. I spent my entire career relying on the advice and work of others. And the RTC has hired a highly qualified consultant to assist them with the Unified Corridor Investment Study, Kimley Horn. They are going to take as careful a look as they can at the options. One of the options is rail with trail. One of the options is bus rapid transit and trail. One of the options is this mixed rail and trail freight service thing. And the last one is bus rapid transit and trail. So they're going to look at all those options. And they're going to do their best job to figure out what those options are worth, what they're going to cost to construct, what the environmental benefits are going to be, what the equity benefits are going to be. You know, they're going to do their best to give you a triple bottom line analysis of all the options and scenarios. They're going to spread that across all three corridors, and you're going to be armed with the best possible information you can get to make a decision. That's what's going to happen. And you're going to have to rely on them because they are experts. They've invested their lives in understanding this stuff. That's how it works.
A couple of questions for you, Mark. What can you imagine any portion of the current rail not being pulled up and the roadbed rebuilt for a permanent light rail system? Aren't we not?
Say that again?
Would we not be required to replace every foot of rail and railroad tie just to make a light rail system operate, considering the condition that most of us know that the rail is in right now? I don't know that the existing roadbed ties or rails could handle any kind of ongoing daily transit with light rail.
Well, the experts, when the rail feasibility study was prepared, the experts looked at that, and what their conclusion was that roughly 1/3 of the ties would rail would have to be replaced. It maybe there's a little more, maybe a little less, but here's what I can tell you about replacing ties and rails. That's like putting a new roof on your house. It's routine. It's done all the time. It's not a big deal. That's what happens. It's like putting an overlay on your street. It's just, this is a normal part of the deal. It doesn't mean the rail's no good. It doesn't mean the rail bed's no good. It just means you're doing a little maintenance work.
What kind of timeline do you think there is from where we sit today to seeing a regular and daily light rail system along this corridor?
Well, that could Santa Rosa is probably the closest example of a modern rail that was built recently. It required 9 years to build. So if we decided to build a light rail system, I think we could expect that was a 40 miles long.
Mm-hmm.
We have half that length. Perhaps we could do it in 7 years. I don't know. That's a complicated question, but it doesn't take long to build things when you decide to build things.
Is there a downside to covering the rails now with decomposed granite to use as a temporary trail until this light rail gets funded and designed and in operation?
Well, the biggest problem you would have with that would essentially require that the rail be taken out of service. The rail line is an active rail line. We've had a bad operator. Iowa Pacific is a terrible operator, bad business people. They're not representative of what that rail corridor could be doing even now had we had a good operator. I think the RTC is about to replace them. I think when they're replaced, you will see what that rail line can produce in a very short time. So to take that rail out of service, then you'd have to abandon the rail line. You'd have to go through that process that the RTC described in their December 8th memo to the Commission describing the roadmap of taking the rail out of service. That involved 13 different steps. It involved 8 years minimum. It cost $32 million. So that's the kind of delay and cost that you'd incur if you decide you want to take out some part of the rail line.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Just a quick
yes,
follow-up on
go right
that.
ahead.
Mark, you mentioned you were a civil engineer.
Yep.
Tell me in a minute or less whether that Soquel Bridge is going to fall into the Soquel Creek.
Are you talking about the big trestle?
The trestle.
So as a professional engineer, I will tell you this. That bridge is nearing the end of its useful service life. It's over 100 years old. That bridge is going to have to be replaced at some point in the future. I haven't studied that bridge. I don't know when it would have to be replaced. As a professional civil engineer, I can tell you if you're looking for money and you don't want to pay for this yourself, that's an expensive venture. You would want to keep the rail line in place because it's going to be a lot easier to replace a rail bridge than a pedestrian bridge or a bicycle bridge. The other thing I would add to that is the city of Santa Cruz has looked carefully at the San Lorenzo River trestle, and what they found with that trestle is that they could cantilever the rail trail off the side of that trestle for about $1.5 million. The master plan assumed that that would be a $6.7 million expense. So the city of Santa Cruz, by sharpening their pencils and hiring some good engineers to take a closer look at that one piece, that one bridge, they saved about $5 million. So I don't know what the Capitola Bridge is capable of supporting, but I can also tell you that adding a rail trail, a trail to a bike trail to an existing railroad bridge, that's a trifle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring this back now, close the public comment. I want to thank two very passionate, articulate, and intelligent gentlemen, both of you I know personally, both of you I have the highest respect for bringing this to us. Council, would you like to start, Jacques?
I guess I'm on this end, right? So
I put you there for a reason.
You switched me.
I know I did.
Okay. So, quite frankly, everything I wrote is probably going to be different. So I'm going to be hesitating and going through these things. Usually I speak ad lib, but to me this is a pretty important, very important issue for Santa Cruz and Capitola. So first of all, what is this evening? In my way of thinking about it, it's an exercise in democracy, and the city of Capitola has provided the forum to do this. So I thank all of you for coming here to listen to each other and try to get an idea of what the other side is saying so that this conversation can continue. And that's part of what democracy is about. So we're here to learn about the two different visions that one of them may or may not be the one that's going to be carried forward. So this is not often that this is a venue that's provided to the public. So I thank all of you for coming here and participating in whatever way that you've chosen to participate. But take what you've heard here tonight and tell people what you've learned, and tell people that this is a conversation that they should be a part of also. And I'll get to that in a minute. So a lot of times you frame something in terms of your personal life. So my first time on a railroad was up in Mendocino. My dad, uncle, and I took the Skunk Railroad into Fort Bragg for supplies. So we were too far out for any reasonable amount of time to get back and forth, so we flagged the train down. So I'm a little kid at 3 or 4. It was great to fly down the Skunk Railroad. And I might add, it was truly the Skunk Railroad in those days. Now it's a tourist thing. I've also jumped trains, and I rode into Seattle Portland. That's what it was. And that was quite an experience too. So fast forward to Capitola. So I'm being asked by Dennis Norton over there to support the purchase of the Santa Cruz branch line. And of course, I found myself, why not? I remember my dad telling me when a great transit system in San Francisco was taken up, a line that went across the Oakland Bay Bridge, and he used to say rather mournfully that it came back in the form of bullets because this scrap was sold to Japan. Then came Measure D, and it passed. So a coalition of many community groups with different ideas on how to solve our transportation problems sort of held their gun, I guess, but all helped it to pass. Because we all need that money. We all knew that we needed something because, as said a couple of times now, we're a fairly low resource area of the state. We don't have a lot of people. We moved here for that reason. That's very important to consider. So now, the issue that we have to focus on is how do we go about improving our transportation options in Santa Cruz? We know that. So this gets to me what the Unified Corridor Study is about. So as you know, I'm the RTC rep here from Capitola. I pushed to get on the RTC because I wanted to make sure that that was a focus. That was a clear focus. And every time I've had a chance at an RTC meeting, and everyone I talk to about this issue, I say to them, focus on the Unified Corridor Study. I want that to come up with a solution, with a conclusion that is the best for this community. Not just Capitola, not just Watsonville, but the whole community of Santa Cruz. So basically, Santa Cruz residents, because of D, have provided the funds, but how are we going to best spend those funds? Consider that we lived in a community, as I said, without the resources of a large metropolitan area. We are spread out, so our transportation infrastructure is expensive. Think of all the country roads. Think of the ones that have collapsed in the last winters. Think of all the bridges and the one-lane things that you have to go by because there's no road there. It was mentioned, we just put in a bike path on Park Avenue, and it's already collapsed. So increasing pressures because of people coming to Capitola, even though Kerry said 50% go over on 17, we still have a lot of traffic here that is increasingly harder for people to get around. As mentioned by one mother and the two girls, young ladies that came here, they can't get to their dance class very easily. It takes half an hour. So imagine going to school, coming home, and whatever else they have to do, and then going to dance class, and they have to wait a half an hour. So I understand that, because my daughter had to do the same. So would a railroad help relieve some of the congestion on Highway 1? It probably would. But at what cost to our community? So I asked this question. Peter's sitting over there. I was sitting over there a little while ago, and I was a city treasurer, and I was thinking about the same things. How are we going to supply services to our community if we have other drains on our budget? And that's what we have to think about. So get back to the fact that we are basically a community with very few resources. Communities that support local rail transit systems generally have populations in the millions and population densities much higher than ours, which is just over about 400,000 square per mile, population square mile. And this is important when we consider going out for funding. So I was just looking around for what does bus rapid transit cost? And I agree, Mark. All these examples are going to be different, but I found that San Francisco just got a grant. So they're getting $75 million to put in a bus rapid transit system on Market Street. That's wonderful. And they anticipate 52,400 rides in an average week. We're not in that league. So I think it's a blithe statement on our part to say that we're just going to get money to pay for all these things. We did D, but are we going to do the son of D to pay for a new rail? Are we going to put a tax levy on our customers here at stores or TOT drain or whatever it is to pay for the maintenance? And then who's going to pay for that on a regular ride? I love trains. I took SP from San Francisco to Sunnyvale for years. It cost me a lot, though, but I had a good salary. So I chose BRT because that's one of the options being considered by the RTC. So this money was just to build it. So I said there's tons of other issues, operations, etc. These are going to come from the feds and the state, and that's an unknown. So back to the Unified Corridor Study. It should provide an unbiased evaluation of the starting point options. So as earlier talked about, Steve laid out the different options. We should have an unbiased look at how those are going to work together to supply the best solution for this community. So in my professional life, I've worked on multiple evaluation studies. 2 that I managed took over 2 years at least. And I know the difficulties in evaluating information that is not ambiguous. That's ambiguous, excuse me, double negative, or clear cut. Again, I emphasize the need for this community to stay focused on those who are doing the study and to be ready for the review process. And that's our responsibility as citizenry. Our responsibility is not to sit and accept what is passed down from high. I don't care if Kimberly Horn's the best in the world. Our responsibility is to drill down and make sure that they did their homework. And so I'm saying to Kimberly Horn, we will be looking. They are the professionals, and I understand that, and I respect that. But when I gave a report on any one of my proposals, I was drilled. And I accepted that because that was my job and that was my responsibility to answer those questions. So getting to Capitola. Capitola came out in a clear voice, at least to those who participated in Vision Capitola, against a rail going through our town. Generally, in my conversations around town, this view is getting more acceptance. Not everyone participated, but they talk to their neighbors and they see the reasons why that was their conclusion, and they say, hey, it makes sense. So what would a train and a trail mean for Capitola? A lot of us have talked about it. 60 trips through town every day. And then if the trail was directed to the village, I've talked to merchants about this. We have pretty big traffic problems here on Stockton Bridge. We all joke about it also in a funny way. There's so many people crossing the streets all the time that the cars have to wait, and that even makes it worse. So imagine if the trail got redirected to Capitola Village. It'd be a zoo. So I thought traffic was bad enough in the village. But maybe a trail would be a different experience. People would continue on their walk across the trestle. Some would drop down in town if they wanted to get a bite to eat, something like that. Another thing, in the off-season, I think it would be a real boom. There'd be a lot of people out there walking. So new businesses would develop to cater to these people. So I think, that would be something very exciting. So I pulled out of the rail study a conversation that Anthony Fox must have had, and someone wrote it down, or maybe it's just a quote. I don't think we should plan for a transportation system that's 1956. We should plan for 2045. I think this community will find solutions for what we have as our transportation problem. And I think the Unified Corridor Study will be the start of that discussion. I think people will realize the cost, and they will be in a position where they're going to say, does this cost outweigh the benefits? Someone said 5,500 people might travel from Watsonville to Central Santa Cruz. So that's what that study is going to give us. And I asked a couple of questions about how do you compare things when you don't have a way to justify that, you have to be able to compare options that are on, you have to have comparables to make a study, but not all those comparables are completely the same. So you do have to have people to go through the numbers and analyze the situations that you're taking the comparables from and come out with some numbers at the end that we could use. So I am for doing the Unified Corridor Study. I think we should wait for that. I think it's a responsible thing to do. I've had a lot of pressure to say, no, we need to put our foot, to make a stand right here now. I could talk about what I actually prefer. Yes, I would prefer a trail only, I have to admit, but that's my preference. I would use that trail all the time. I just recently went down to Marina during my wife and I had a wedding anniversary. We said, let's take a ride. Went to Marina to Monterey. It was absolutely wonderful. There's people in walkers there. I couldn't believe it. There's people with dogs. There's people that are training for some sort of race. It was totally amazing. And that's what we could have, I think. I don't quite believe that a train next to that trail would be what I would like to seek out. But that's my own preference. So what I'm trying to say to my city council and to everyone that's listening, our preferences are important, especially in our own individual lives. But in this case, it's all of Santa Cruz.
Thank you, Jacques. Kristen?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight and for voicing your opinion, regardless of what side of the issue you happen to be on. I counted that there were 40 public speakers tonight, which is funny because we've been getting a lot of emails about this issue. In fact, I reset my inbox to 0 on Monday night. When I woke up on Tuesday, I had 40 emails. So I wonder if it's the same 40 people. I have been listening to both sides of this issue. I've met with people on both sides of this issue. And I agree that there's a lot of information that it's kind of hard to determine what's accurate, how we compare it, how we compare the two sides of information to each other, to other projects, etc. It sounds like, to begin with, we all agree that we have problems with traffic, with environment, with greenhouse gas emissions. And what we disagree on is how to solve those problems. So it's nice to know that we are united towards a common goal. It's just a matter of how we are divided by addressing the issue. I have heard through the emails, through the phone calls, through Vision Capitola, that overwhelmingly the comments that have come towards me are for trail without rail. And that is the way that I am leaning and supporting at this time, because of the overwhelming amount of contact from Capitola residents saying that that is their preference as well. I also think that it's important for us to do our due diligence in receiving all the possible information that we can before we make a final decision. And it is for that reason I think it is important that we receive the report from the RTC before we solidify any kind of vote of how we feel as a council. That's my personal opinion. And then finally, I kind of, on a bit of a side note, but not, is that I want to thank the two young ladies that were here earlier from New Brighton Middle School, because ultimately they're going to be feeling the impacts of whatever this decision is long after any of the rest of us are. And so it means a lot that they were here. And it means a lot that all of you are here, so thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks, Mike. You know, I want to acknowledge Mark and Bud and all the other speakers. The presentations were great. Everybody made good points. And what I take away from that is I think everybody here tonight probably learned one thing that they didn't know when they sat here from some comment that somebody made. But most of the comments were based on observations, feelings, and a lot of emotions. And the challenge here is there is absolutely no doubt, and Dennis will verify this, that when we acquired that right-of-way, it was the best decision this county ever made. The purchase price was, I think, $14 million, which in real dollars is next to nothing. The big decision is why we're all here is what are we going to do with that? And I think what's really important is that it's not just about whether it's a train or a trail. There are 5 options on there. You heard Representative from Metro speak tonight about possible use for a bus. Nobody really knows how this is going to work. You know, I want to remind everybody that in 2013, we approved the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Trail Program, and in that, this council took a vote. In 2015, passed a resolution to support that, what was it, put in that report. And what we're doing today is we're being asked again for us to make a vote, which we're really not ready to make a vote because we don't have any new information. We have information from presenters. You wouldn't want us making a vote on what people say or your opinions. You want us to take your opinions into weight, but we need to wait for that study. You know, that study came out of Measure D, which I want to acknowledge everybody that in this room who voted for it. And the biggest thing is somebody said that, you know, they didn't vote for a train. Well, the beauty of Measure D was it wasn't just for a train. It was for road improvements, widening Highway 1, this Monterey Scenic Trail, for Metro, and for the train. And because of that, because of those 5 features, we got 69% when we needed 67% to pass to get that. And what it did, the most important thing it did is it made us a self-help county, which means we can get federal money to make these improvements, which we all know the costs are prohibitive. The point I want to get at is the RTC, which I do sit on that board also. I want everybody to know that the RTC is comprised of 12 voting members. If you don't know this, it's all 5 Board of Supervisors, 1 representative from each city, Jacques is our representative, and 3 members from the Metro Bus Board of Directors. And those people will be challenged to vote on what we do with this trail based on the results of the Unified Corridor Study. And I want you to know that that Unified Corridor Study cost $849,000. Now, would you want us to vote on this Board of Capitola? We just heard our treasurer scold us about consultants and costs. And for us to prematurely vote on a decision without the results of that, I think you should all tell us we all need to quit our jobs. We're here to serve the people of Capitola. And I heard something mentioned about Vision Capitola, and Vision Capitola was a kind of an eye-awakening for a lot of us on what people in Capitola thought. But keep in mind, the people that voted for the train at Vision Capitola, there are more people in this room than there were that voted at Vision Capitola. And this is a town of 10,000. 30 people voted. If we're going to talk about whether we're going to have a train or a trail, I would like to get voices from more than 30 people. So what I'm an advocate for is I'm an advocate that we wait for the Unified Corridor Study, we come back, as everybody's mentioned so far, and we make a knowledgeable, informed decision, because they're going to give us facts. They're not going to be showing their bias or their presentation. And regardless of what people think about where the RTC may or may not have been leading the Board of Directors, I've been on the board for 2 years, and I'm here to tell you there are independent people, as was mentioned by Philippe and Rochelle Naroyan. This is a county-wide issue. We are concerned about that 32 miles from Watsonville to Santa Cruz, and everybody has a piece of that at stake. So I'm a complete advocate with my other 2 council members here to wait until the corridor study is done and then have a vote.
Well, I'm not seeing this council making any bold moves. As much as I would have dearly hoped, because, you know, if we do make a motion and vote to have the city manager come back with a resolution supporting one way or the other, it's not going to make it happen. It's just going to let the people know how we feel. So it's really it's a statement of desire. Consider it that way. I I like your idea about the Unified Corridor Study, although when I was on the RTC, I have seen too many rail studies come back that lean negative, are ignored, and another study is done, and we all know the definition of insanity. We kept asking the same question over and over, and we're hoping for a different answer. So I don't have a lot of faith in the rail. The fact that someone who I've worked with in the county as an engineer for years, Mark, speaks on behalf of it throws a lot of weight against me, because again, I respect his knowledge, I respect his experience. I just don't respect any of the rail studies we've had or the action of the RTC in the face of those rail studies. So while I'm not seeing anybody nodding their head and jumping over the fence with me, I will entertain a motion on how this council would like to proceed. Ed.
I'd like to make a motion that we wait for the completion of the Unified Corridor Study, and at that point get together prior to the voting of the RTC and make a statement of where the City of Capitola weighs in on the measure.
Friendly amendment that included with that the action at that meeting that we direct our representative to the RTC in the matter in which we would want him to vote on this matter when it comes before him.
So be it.
Second. And there's a second. And don't go anywhere after this vote. There's more. All in favor?
Mr. Mayor, a clarification, please. You said complete the Unified Trail Corridor Study. My understanding is you mean the draft corridor study is published.
When this is released in the fall, when the results are there, we come back as a council and weigh in on that and direct our representative how we feel and where our support lies.
Thank you.
Good?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? And I would like to bring 2 items before the council. I'd just like a consensus on these items. I'm taking a little out of order. Usually this happens at the end of the meeting, but I'm going to do it now while we have this full audience. The first is, if I understand it correctly, the RTC has gone out for RFPs for a new rail service. I think any new rail service that's looking at the RFP is a 200-ton rail service, not a 50-ton light rail. Because of that, and because of the fact that I asked the RTC for an engineering study of our trestle 4 months ago, and they have yet to even put the RFP out for that, I don't see it happening any sooner, that this council meet as soon as possible to take definitive action, legal if necessary, to prevent any 200-ton anything from going over our trestle, because we are the only trestle in this county that has souls living under it. And I will not endanger the members of our community in any way, shape, or form on a dubious form of transportation going across a dubious 100-plus-year-old trestle. Is there a consensus that we can bring this back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can be brought up at the meeting, and Jacques or I can see that it's put on the agenda that at least a bridge evaluation.
No, I want it to come back to the council as an agenda item in February. For taking some kind of action with the RTC and a formal demand and how we're going to proceed, because if I hear this RFP going out for a new rail line, we could see locomotives going over there in the next couple of months, and we need to meet and send a strong message to the RTC now before the train locomotive goes over the trestle.
I can appreciate that, but I believe that item is on the agenda for the 18th of January.
In the RTC? What item is on the agenda?
The new lease.
The new lease, exactly, to my point that we need to meet, as it's not on the agenda tonight, so we can't take any action.
Correct.
I'd like to just agendize a discussion on the trestle and our options with regard to the RTC and a new operator and new 200-ton locomotives traveling over it.
I appreciate that, but our next meeting is a...
I'm not saying the next meeting. I'm saying as soon as possible, agendize it.
Okay.
In our normal fashion.
That's
all
fine.
good? So we will put that on the agenda. We'll discuss the trestle. Second item, since we're on the subject, and we'll get through it quickly, I would like as soon as possible to put on the agenda, and if I can get a consensus, a resolution protecting the Monterey Bay from oil drilling that is in danger of being opened up by the federal government. Can we discuss that? Is that okay?
Are we on the same topic, or is that?
I just went to a different topic.
You're just going on, you just want to put things on the agenda?
Right.
I'm fine.
Good. Those two items will come up soon on the agenda.
Point of information.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did bring up at RTC meeting, and you were there, Ed, that we would get this evaluation done on our trestle. And it was promised, George Shandera promised to have that scheduled for November. Had a prior meeting, and he looked at the schedule because you have to evaluate these things.
I was at that meeting with you, and I heard George say he was going to do it in November, and
That's
I'm
right.
sitting here in January.
That's right.
Okay.
So I met with him last week, and I said, "Where's the evaluation?" And he
We're
says-
drifting off into the woods. It's becoming an agenda thing that's not agendized.
Oh, okay.
Right, that's
so we'll
what-
talk about that later.
Okay.
We're going to take a 10-minute recess. Thank you all for coming. You are part of government. You're a part of the public process. Thank you. Engaging Councilmember Bertrand.
Pretty.
Okay, folks, here we go. We're starting our meeting again.
Watch my ironic.
The next item on our agenda is the consideration of approval of a skate park mural artist contract. Recommended action, approve the Monty Family Skate Park Mural Project and contract with Taylor Reinhold and Jimbo Phillips in the amount of $10,000. This recommendation comes from our Art and Cultural Commission. Larry, what do you have to say to us?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for hearing this. So this is a mural concept at the skate park at McGregor Park, not on 300 Capitola Ave like it had in the contract. So this is at just the contract. But I want to make sure we know this is going to be at the skate park. So basically, the Capitola Public Art Program began in 2004. We collect a fee for every commercial project above $250,000. The builder has the opportunity to either contribute 2% to public art on the property or contribute 1% to the public art fund. As of this time, every developer has contributed to the public art fund. The current balance for the public art fund is $250,000. This year we budgeted $75,000 with the idea that we would have a few projects. We've already gone through the railing at 300 Capitola Avenue. And so the next one here is the mural. Just to make sure we know that public art funds are restricted for public art usage. Those funds are recommended by the Art and Cultural Commission based on projects. So I don't know if everyone's had a chance to go out to the skate park. There's two sections of the skate park. One is the half pipe, and the other is kind of the free skate. This mural is going to be on the outside walls all around the half pipe. So it's the one length, the long wall as well as the two side. There's going to be art murals as part of that.
What faces the parking lot?
It's going to face the parking lot, and it's also going to be on the sides facing the walkway and the road.
You're right.
So the project was budgeted at $10,000 based on experience with other mural projects. The Art and Cultural Commission felt that what they wanted to do was get a piece of art out there that would reflect the skating community, be respected by the skating community. Although we haven't had, knock on wood, we haven't had a lot of problems with graffiti. This is one way we hope that will help kind of dissuade some of that activity. The commission nominated a group of folks as an art selection committee. We included commissioners as well as stakeholders and people very experienced in public art. We received over 15 submissions, reviewed the submissions, looked at past work. The selection committee recommended 3 artists bring proposals to the full commission. And the Art and Culture Commission selected the one we're bringing in for you. It's from Taylor Reinhold and Jimbo Phillips. I am not a skateboarder, but I definitely know both of these folks' art. It is on pretty much, you'll see it on skateboards everywhere. See, the murals are everywhere. So a couple examples of Taylor's work. Taylor's is definitely more the experienced muralist. Some of the work we see, the fish, I believe that's from Plantronics. They recently did the East End, the East End Tap Room, I believe. And so his work is murals all over town. Jimbo Phillips is really an iconic skateboard artist. His father actually, created the initial Santa Cruz hand, and he's a lot of his work is deeply involved in the skateboarding community. As we say, they have a strong relationship. They live here in Santa Cruz County, and actually, which is really exciting, this is going to be the first time they've ever collaborated. So this is going to be a unique thing that at this point in time, nowhere else, it's not going to exist anywhere else. And so basically, I think I've put up there a copy of the hard copy of the proposal. Obviously, with any mural, it's not going to look exactly like this. They're going to get out there, and it's going to be organic creation. They're going to figure out, well, you know, we like this based on what we see, but this is the basic the concept. It's going to include a lot of motifs, skateboarding as well as the ocean, as well as you see, as our favorite, the parking stops, which are very popular in the skateboarding community. So it's got pizza. Well, everyone gets hungry. So that's it. That's the presentation. I was wondering if you have any questions.
Any questions, Council? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to us? I see one of our art and cultural commissioners out there, Laurie Hill.
All I want to say is I led the subcommittee process. I reviewed all the talented muralist proposals, and this team is the bomb. So they are the most relevant and are going to do a fabulous job for Capitola.
Thank you, Lori.
I might also add that we did interview and we gave small stipends to 3 artists that brought us representations of what they would do, and this one stood out head and shoulders. So close the public process and bring it back to the council. Any deliberation, any motions?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? There we go. On to more art. Approval of the Esplanade Park climbable sculpture contract with Kim Chavez Bronze Work in the amount of $50,000. Larry, you're on again.
I am. Thank you. So this sculpture was part of the initial piece of the Esplanade, I guess, park redesign back in February, I believe. We don't have to go through this again.
Not that we didn't enjoy it.
I understand. I understand. So this was part of the initial first phase of the Esplanade Park redesign. This will be located basically at the front of the park, near the on the grassy area. It's going to be installed on a unitary shock absorbing surface, so that way when people climb on it, if not that they're going to fall, but if they fall, they will be cushioned. This is basically for play. This material is for playgrounds.
Is it black rubber or is it something like that?
It's something like that, but there's a lot of options, right. So that'll be part of the process of figuring out. It will be secured to a concrete pad underneath it, and then I believe it'll be at least 6 inches deep. This material. So this is what I was saying. At the February 9th meeting, the council approved this as the initial phase of the Esplanade Park redesign. The commission really was looking for a sculpture that not only fit into the area, ocean themed, but they really wanted something that could be touched and experienced by children and adults alike. And so that's why we use the term playable. We want this. The commission wanted something that you wouldn't just look at, you could touch, you could be part of. And so the commission nominated Art Selection Committee to put out a proposal, a request for artistic folks. And actually, I just noticed that the project, this is incorrect in my presentation. The project is actually budgeted at $50,000. This is what happens when you copy and paste. This sculpture, because we had budgeted $75,000, this will require a $35,000 budget amendment from the Public Art Fund for this year in order to have this. So that would bring up this year's. I mean, it's from the Public Art Fund. I think we mentioned currently we have $250,000 in it. The selection committee issued a call for ours. In this piece, we had over 45 submissions. So there was a lot of reviewing of pretty talented people. They really did. So they also recommended, they whittled it down to 3, and 3 artists came to the full commission with tremendous ideas, and the work by Kim Chavez stood out. They were the work fit what the commission was looking for as far as a playable sculpture, and this is what they're recommending to the council. These are examples of what she's done before.
She was the artist for our kiosk,
right.
Otter, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't include that because hopefully we've all seen it. But these are other projects that she has done in a somewhat similar scale. This is a large project for her.
It was in the packet, I think.
Okay.
A picture of
Okay.
was in there.
Yes, it definitely, and I think that has fit in well down to the Esplanade. So this is a small design that she brought in. This is the concept that she proposed as well. I think it's Chavez Bronze Works is both her and her husband. She's the artist, and he's helps with some of the logistics. We have a little more detail about the height. It's going to be about 5 feet tall, and I believe it's a little over 9 feet in length from end to tail to end to tail. And so it's a significant sculpture. The base that in there was there for this design. This would rest directly on the material, because if we couldn't put that base there because it wouldn't meet code. So that is kind of the end. Unfortunately, she was not able to come down from Oregon for this. But if you have any questions, I'd more than happy.
Any questions, council?
Quick question.
Yes.
I had a concern raised about bronze and whether beating in the sun it would become a hot surface.
That was brought up at the commission meeting, and she is going to be working on ways to mitigate that. But yes, it will definitely. It'll get warm for sure. It is a metal, but she took that and she's going to be working on a way to kind of mitigate the heat.
Okay.
Question? What do you mean by non-code surface?
Pardon? Oh, so it's basically it's going to be sitting on directly the material that is designed for playgrounds.
Okay,
so in this example, the way she had to cast it, it includes that base. That base is not going to, the hard base is not going to be there. The actual sea lines will rest directly on.
Everything will be soft?
Yes, underneath.
Okay.
Correct.
Anyone from the public?
Excuse me, does that mean the thing could rock or move?
No, it's going to be secured to the concrete pad underneath with I think 6 or 8 inch stainless bolts.
No one's going to get away with this.
Yeah.
Well, we've had disappearing art.
I know, but yeah, then no one's going to get away with this.
This is 9 feet by, well, so I'm not going to put it by anyone, but it's going to be secured.
And heavy.
Let's not make it a challenge, but is there anyone from the public who would like to address the council? If not, discussion or motion?
I move we accept this offer, this proposal.
Second.
Been motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Looks beautiful. We could be the Copenhagen on the west.
Give us time. Give us time. So now, the last item on our agenda is the zoning code update. Katie.
Thank you. Before you tonight is the adoption hearing for the zoning code update. To date, we have been through stakeholder and public outreach, issues and options papers, many drafts that have been before the Planning Commission and City Council. And since September or July, we've been June in the adoption hearing process. So we had a 60-day public review, followed by Planning Commission providing City Council with a positive recommendation on September 6th. You reviewed the draft twice in November. And tonight we're asking for the first reading for the adoption. One item that did come up during the last meeting, and we've since redlined the document and provided you with updated copies. This evening you had 2 new pages because the maps really didn't come out well. And there was an error. They didn't include I think the DMV or the AAA building on the map. So I've given you 2 new replacement copies and once it's printed in white, the maps will come out a whole lot better. So basically, I wanted to see if you have any questions or concerns with the changes to the Capitola Road, the north side. I should mention the front page of the paper was incorrect today. The south side is zoned to be 35 feet in height with a 40-foot setback. The north side was changed from community commercial to mixed-use neighborhood, 27-foot height with a 512 pitch, and also a requirement that there's adequate space for a future sidewalk. So that's on the north side of the street. Any questions about north side of the street?
Jacques.
Yeah, I do. So I did get constituent comment. We all know who the person was. So in terms of the 27-foot, so if you have commercial on the bottom, the question basically talked about the ceiling height there would be maybe 12 feet or something like that, and then that greatly restricts the second floor. Are we going to have some options, or is that even needed? I'm just trying to understand that.
There'll be adequate space to do 2 stories and have a roof that
looks fairly decent.
That looks fairly decent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just wanted to figure that one out, or no? Okay.
Yeah, you know, there's a
enough
512 pitch regulation. You could always decrease that if you felt that you didn't want to have, you could say it must be pitched at like 212 or something. You know, you could
So
make
there
it
could be a variance
less
there.
so that
Yeah.
there's more flexibility in the pitch of the roof.
You could do a mansard roof. There's a lot of things that can happen.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Any further discussion?
Just one comment. I just want to acknowledge to the entire planning staff that although you were scolded for a 4-year process, it was not your fault. Okay, so just want to make that clear. Okay.
Yeah, you chased away someone on your staff. I
Is
mean,
there-
this is so much work.
Is there a motion to approve
I move that we approve.
the first reading
Yeah,
of the
the
zoning
first reading,
code
yes.
as presented?
As presented, yes.
So I'll second that motion.
Is there anything on the back of the city manager's teeth that wants to come out? No, I just saw something being held back. Then let's have a roll call on this one, please.
Councilmember Bertrand?
Here. Approve.
Oh, we know you're here.
Yeah, I know.
Councilmember Peterson?
I'm tired.
Aye. Councilmember Bator?
Aye.
And Mayor Termini?
Aye. That concludes the regular meeting of the Capitola City Council. We will now adjourn and open the next meeting, which I know you wanted the next meeting, which is the City of Capitola, successor agency to the former Capitola Redevelopment Agency. May I have a roll call of directors, please?
Hold on a second.
It's okay.
Director Bertrand, Director Peterson.
Here.
Director Bator.
Here.
Chair Termini.
Here. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda or additional material, Mr. City Manager?
Staff has no changes.
We have a consent calendar. Are we familiar with it?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very good. Next is the general government hearing, and for that, our finance director comes to talk to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. So the next item before you is the fiscal year 18-19 recognized obligation payment schedule, or ROPS, for the former RDA, now successor agency. There's not really a lot of changes. The ROPS for 18-19 is going to be $242,000, which includes the final payment on the loan that the city manager mentioned during the budget hearings, and then the assistance that we provide to the Housing Authority, as well as Millennium Housing at Castle Mobile Home Park, and then just our admin cost. So it really is basically the same as we've been doing each year. If approved, then we will take this before the Oversight Board next Wednesday on the 17th. That is it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, council? And yes, John.
So how long are the payments going to go to Castle?
Castle, they run through June 30th of 21, I believe.
21. So this is out of $1 million I think we had
Yes.
scheduled. Okay, thank you. Is that an account that draws interest, or, I mean, it's probably very small, but...
It is in the successor agency fund, so we request the money from the state, and then it goes into that fund, and then Castle only pulls out what they actually need. So as we start getting closer to that that 2021 date, we'll start doing some true ups. So we'll probably we ratcheted down what we're requesting this time because we have a little bit of fund balance.
Okay.
So we're going to start spending that fund balance down. So with the idea of it being zeroed out by the last payment.
Okay, thank you.
And all of these payments to the treasurer, not personally, but representing Capitola, these were all incorporated into our budget for this year.
Correct.
So there's no surprises. That means yes, no surprises. I know. Any further discussion? Anyone from the public? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
And I believe that brings our meeting, our second meeting of the night, to an end. Well done. Difficult, long, tedious meeting, but it had to be long and
Oh, it
tedious.
was ran very well, and they were a very moderate crowd.
It was a nice crowd.
You
I
have
like to
it
think
under control.
Capitola inspired them. Good night, Capitola. Be happy. Look where you live.